indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to ask for a moment of silence and turn this over to the mayor, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just think about all those folks that were affected by the storm this weekend. We're grateful there was no loss of life, but certainly people's lives have been disrupted greatly. A lot of stress involved when you get water up in your first floor. So let's keep them in mind and in our prayers in the coming days. Thank you.
Superintendent, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Andronico.
Present.
Mr. Bergoli.
Present.
Mr. Diomitrius.
Present.
Mr. Gattro.
Present.
Mrs. Hubley.
Present.
Mrs. Lebo.
Present.
Mayor Coe.
Present.
And North Quincy High School, Luke Malloy.
This time, I would like to ask for approval of the minutes.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is open forum, an opportunity for community input regarding the Quincy Public Schools. After giving his or her name and address, each speaker may make a presentation of no more than 4 minutes to the school committee. An individual may not exchange their time or yield to others. Anybody for open forum? Sorry.
Good evening. My name is Courtney Cordias. I live at 86 Ruggles Street in Quincy, and I'm co-president of Citywide PTO. I just wanted to let everyone know that the presentation that you will be hearing tonight on school safety will also be held at our citywide meeting on April 9th. We had hoped to have it at our March meeting, but one of the presenters couldn't make that meeting date, so we'll be having it on April 9th. And following the presentation, parents will have the opportunity to ask questions, express concerns, and offer ideas on the topic of school safety. So we wanted to invite you all to come, and any parents listening tonight. Thank you.
Anyone else for open forum?
Scott Alessandro, 70 Edward Street, citywide co-president. Though perhaps not planned, it was helpful to have the North Quincy High School mascot discussed at last month's school committee meeting, and we look forward to the school committee creating opportunities for further discussions. And in those discussions, bringing together information and different perspectives so as to look at the issue from all angles. This is a wonderful opportunity for the school committee and the QPS administration to model for QPS students how to have effective and inclusive conversations and enabling them to have the same conversations in their schools and classes. As was outlined in the letter sent by Citywide in November to the school committee regarding the mascot, we requested that the school committee and QPS administration create a strategy and timeline for enabling a discussion about the North Quincy High School mascot in the Quincy schools. At the citywide meeting on Monday, March 12th at 7 p.m. at Broadmeadows Middle School, we will consider ideas for how to move this discussion to take place in the schools. We look forward to sharing the thoughts and insights from the meeting with all of you. And of course, we invite you and all QPS parents to attend to hear firsthand and share input on working towards an open discussion related to the North Quincy High School mascot. We don't know what's best for everybody, but we do know to get the best solution, it is important to hear from everybody. More discussions, and more importantly, more formal, deliberate opportunities for these discussions allow this to happen. Like learning, conversations can happen organically. However, this does not stop us from having frameworks and rubrics and goals to achieve specific learning outcomes. This is what we are hoping to build towards: deliberate, informed, inclusive discussions about the mascot in the Quincy Public Schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for open forum? Seeing none, I'm going to close that section of the agenda. Superintendent, would you report, please?
Good evening, everyone. We'll start with Inspire.
Skittles or M&M's?
M&Ms.
about like this lion that kept on coming to like their city and like that. And then they made this, and then they made that lion, and then they got people to dance so it would go away.
I think the most important thing about Chinese New Year is when you get to have some time with your family and you guys go out for Chinese food and have fun.
This is our third family event we've had in kindergarten this year.
We're so thankful to all the parents that come and the grandparents. They make this day so special. The kids love it here at Atherton Howe.
The kids get so excited to see their families, and we just love all being together to celebrate.
So today we're here, we're making our boxes for our Valentine's Day celebrations in our classrooms. Our parents have come, they've helped us by donating various items.
It's just nice to bring everybody together. You know, we meet throughout the year to talk about report cards and the kids' progress, and that's really important, but it's also important, you know, to have fun and celebrate, you know, learning and enjoyment.
We're also captains, by the way.
What does that mean?
So we're kind of like the leaders of the team. So we take up different tasks to help the team, and we're kind of like the face of the team, I guess. Excited to join like all these clubs, but I recommend you guys like picking sports that you like and a few clubs that you like, so you don't overwork yourself and you don't kind of just put too much on your plate, because it will make high school difficult. Try and have a nice balance of like schoolwork, sports, activities that you enjoy. It'll make high school fun and easy.
Freestyle is basically bring your arms up into a bend, come out of the water, all the way around. Oh, I love speaking. Come on. I want you guys to focus on keeping your head down and getting your arms all the way out of the water. Yeah.
I think the ADD part that they're always like near us, like that's important, because like those can also help save somebody's life. Like they said, it takes it from 0% to 90%. So like that's like a big factor.
Students next year who take this course, I honestly would say pay attention, because this is like could be the difference between life or death. This could mean something huge. This could be like so important in your life, and you really need it.
We're here for their to help celebrate Dr. Seuss's birthday with Reading Week. We all got to choose a book from a wonderful collection and classroom.
He lifted the dust speck and carried it over and placed it down.
I love kids, and I love the look on their faces, and in the past when I've read to them, they're just so inquisitive and they have so many questions, and it's just really a joy to be with them and to share that love of reading.
Robert Horton. I've never heard. I chose to come here today because I do love to read, and actually I went through the Quincy Public School system myself, so I thought it would be a great opportunity to get back to the school system that I went through.
Very proud and you worried. Tears welled in. So I love reading. Reading is like, first of all, it's fundamental, but it's such a great activity to share with kids. I have twins, 9-year-old twins, so this is one of my favorite activities to do with my children, is to read to them. So it's a joy for me to be able to come and read to other children today. The kids, they love listening to adults read. It's actually quite hard to read some of Dr. Seuss's books because they're tongue twisters. So for me, it's great to see the kids' faces when we're reading and have their joy while they're listening to the stories they're telling.
to call up Dr. Hallett and introduce our very special guests.
Okay.
Should have practiced a little more tonight. Sorry, Ben.
That's okay, no problem. Is this on? Okay, good evening. As the Director of Academic Programs, which includes instrumental music, tonight I'm very delighted to recognize KNC Music of Norwood as one of our Quincy Public Schools community partners. We have been so fortunate to be able to work closely with KNC's General Manager, Mr. Walter Andruchow, who is here this evening. Mr. Andruchow has been with KNC for over 23 years and has provided Quincy Public Schools band students at all levels with thousands of instruments and cases as either purchases, rentals, or scholarship instruments over the last 10 years. Here are a few of the ways that Mr. Andruchow, on behalf of KNC, has supported the Quincy Public Schools instrumental music program. KNC assists with all of our music department repair needs. If there is a need for weekly communication between KNC and our band directors through phone calls or personal visits to make sure that supplies and repairs are taken care of, Mr. Andruchow is on top of that. He also has offered very valuable professional advice regarding growth and sustainability in a flourishing instrumental music program. KNC has been very flexible with our families for instrumental rental payment schedules. And KNC has also donated hundreds of musical instruments over the years to our growing music programs since partnering with Quincy Public Schools. And this year alone, KNC has donated over $58,000 worth of instruments to the Quincy Public Schools. These are in the form of 10 flutes, 10 clarinets, 11 saxophones, 10 trumpets, and 10 trombones. We cannot thank Mr. Andruchow and KNC Music enough for all that they have done for Quincy Public Schools' instrumental music program, and we look forward to continuing this wonderful partnership for many years to come. So I'd like to invite Walter Andruchow up, please. So on behalf of the Quincy Public Schools, we are here to present this certificate of recognition to KNC Music for your generous support to the Quincy Public Schools instrumental program. Thank you. Would you like to speak? I can hold it.
Yeah, I could have an hour or so. This will be quick because honestly I did not prepare anything, so I'm going to fumble through this. Gosh, thank you very much, Beth, Dr. Cristofaro, members of the school committee for this award that we never expect to get from anybody because of our corporate philosophy, where all we care about is the parents, the kids, and the music teachers to see that they do their job as best they can and we can help in their growth. I remember I was talking with Dr. Cristofaro earlier, it was about 10 years ago, I don't remember the exact time. We went to his office and made a presentation because they were looking for a new company to run their rentals and repairs and such. And I don't think you ever knew this. We totally by accident found out that you were looking for a new company. It was like a friend of a friend of a friend told us.
I thought it was by design.
So if we didn't hear that, we never would be here right now. It's just a couple of word of mouth. So it was literally like 2 days later we were doing the meetings with the companies. So we got our act together and I came in and did the presentation. You were sitting there, Rich Keneally, and the rest, as you see, is history. When Matt Kavanaugh called me last week and said we were going to get this award, I said, why? I said, don't you remember that donation you did? I said, oh, well, yeah. I said, but we don't expect awards for it. It's what we do. But it's more than just what we do because it's Quincy. I have to tell you, in the 10 plus so years and I've been at this for 23 years now after being a former music educator myself. I've never encountered a music instrument staff like Quincy has. The desire, the burn, the caring they have for the kids to have their growth happen, to have the music department become better, it's just so contagious that it rubbed off on me, and what do you want? Okay, you got it. And so I come out here, I actually am the person that comes out every Monday to take care of everything. And it's just such a treat to work with Mike, and Matt, as I said, Matt Kavanaugh, Dr. Chuck Wilson, Katie Schmidt, Joe Salvucci, quite the character, and Rich Keneally, of course. It's just such a treat to come out, and I look forward to many more years doing this. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Beth, you want to invite Lori up? Invite Lori.
So I'm also pleased to recognize another important partner. So, as I was saying, I'm very pleased to recognize another important partner in the acquisition and procurement of our musical instruments to Quincy Public Schools, and that is Mrs. Lori Hagberg and the Quincy Band Boosters. Lori is here tonight on behalf of the whole organization and also of her colleagues on the board, Amy O'Regan, and Annette Donahue, Wendy Adams, and David Jacobs. And David is here this evening. So. Quincy Band Boosters, affectionately known as the QBB. First, it began in the fall of 2013. Its mission is to support the Quincy Public Schools instrumental music program through fundraising, program support, and advocacy. Since its inception, QBB has made great strides in fundraising, becoming a 501c3 organization in July of 2014. While its fundraising focus is not entirely on musical instruments, QBB has been able to procure the following instruments for the rapidly developing musical instrument program since 2015. The full percussion section of the Sterling Middle School, which includes drums, timpani, chimes, bells, xylophone, cymbals, and much more. Marching percussion instruments for Quincy High School, for Quincy's High School Marching Band, and these instruments are made differently to accommodate being carried and moved across a football field or on a parade route. 2 concert euphoriums, a marimba, and percussion equipment for each school, such as drumsticks, mallets, stands, and other percussion paraphernalia. So these are just a few of the many contributions that QBB has made to the Quincy Public Schools instrumental program, including student scholarships for private lessons and support for students who attend summer music camps. And we are profoundly grateful for all that Mrs. Hagberg and the Quincy Band Boosters have done to make sure that Quincy Band students and their families have everything that they need to participate in this meaningful program. So we look forward to continued success, and we thank you for your work with us in this organization.
Thank you, Dr. Hallett. And also make sure we, Mike DeMarco, thank you for all that you do for us and our kids. Thanks. Also, just some partnership events. Grade 5 Student Council Leadership. That's Summit is tomorrow. It's our 3rd annual at the Terrell Room, 9 to 11:30. Hopefully there's school tomorrow, so we can work that out. That'd be great. YMCA is a great partner. Bella Insurance, another partner, along with the Terrell Room. So we thank them for their continued support. Credit for Life Fair is March 22nd at the Terrell Room for our seniors in high school. So many partners are involved in that. And then our partnership recognition breakfast is from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock, again at the Terrell Room on March 29th. Always a fine time to recognize our great partners. Kindergarten registration, pre-K registration began tomorrow, and as you know, that's the beginning, first glance at where we go with enrollment and where we go with staffing for the 2018-2019 school year. I want to make sure I mention the Quincy Public Schools is really, we're really pleased that the Department of Education has recognized Quincy for our low dropout rate as well as our 4-year graduation rate. We've had a 69% decrease, 35 fewer students leaving since 2011, and lowered our 2016-2017 rate to 0.6%. Quincy Public Schools, with the support of Mayor Cope, certainly the school committee, our desire, our goal, our mission is for every student to finish school, and I think we've provided so many great opportunities in general as well as special education while we continue to implement some wonderful alternative program pathways to graduation for so many of our students. Our 4-year graduation rate at 93.7%, as noted by DOE, certainly is a credit to our principals, our assistant principals, teachers, our academic program staff, as well as academic support staff. And one of our system initiatives is Dropout Zero, where we work very hard, and Mara chairs that initiative. We work hard with our guidance people, as well as so many others, to just make sure we keep track of our students that may be at risk for dropping out. So we thank Mara for her work, as well as our academic support staff for their fine work. So thank you for that. March 14th is student action in support of school safety. We're looking at middle school. The middle school principals will be sending out, if they haven't already, sending out to parents a description of what they will be doing with their students. And none of our middle school students will be leaving, so it's an in-school opportunity for students that will have a moment of silence as for the 17 fatalities, lives lost, Parkland, as well as activities following that. And before that, the guidance staff will be meeting with students in small groups to discuss, why this is so important to be honored in this way. So on March 14th, on March 12th, there'll be more detail from the middle school principals to parents. I've already met with staff, met with students, so they'll continue that so everyone's communicated with in order that is a very meaningful event for our middle school students. High school is a different story. At Quincy High School and North Quincy High School, students will be allowed to come out for that 17 minutes. And with student leadership, I know Mr. Shaw, Mr. Taglieri has been meeting with staff, more importantly with student leaders, to see what their direction certainly will be for that 17 minutes. So, and also Chief Keenan is here for another reason, but always present when we need something. So we're working with the Quincy Police Department to secure both high schools while the 17 minutes to honor the lives lost. So we'll get more detail. Parents will get more detail of that. And I think the important thing is that it is thoughtful, hopefully thoughtful discussion and expression, as well as making sure that There is no coercion. Its participation is voluntary. I think parents will know that. I think our students will know that. And what we're looking at is a real event that will honor Parkland, but also speak to student safety as well. I want to thank again Quincy Police Department for always being there. So there'll be more communications going out. So if you have any questions, certainly.
Thank you. I just want to say, number one, thank you to the superintendent and all the members of the administration, all the members of the schools for being proactive on this and taking an approach. This is my first time in the school committee, so I suspect that things like this have happened in the past, but yeah, I get the ground truthing inside, and I hear from my sons, both at the high school level and middle school level, that things are handled completely appropriately and exactly as the superintendent said, you know, that it's open and it's optional and it's constructive and it's helpful and it's healthy and it's good. And so, you know, as a parent and as a member of the school committee, I think it's terrific that we're giving the students a voice in terms of how they express their feelings or choose not to express their feelings around these issues. So it's great, and the feedback that I'm hearing, not just from my kids, but from their peers, is that it's constructive and it's helpful, and it's you know, it's important for them to not only acknowledge it and participate in it, but not ignore it. There's a reality to it, and I know that our subsequent discussion is going to be more for the parents and to put everybody's minds at ease that we're doing all the right things to be vigilant, but the students are important, and this is the vehicle for them to express themselves. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. As well, I wanted to, if I could call on Mrs. Lebo. We did meet with the Student Advisory Council the other day, and I'd like to report on that.
We did. On March 1st, the superintendent and I met with Luke Malloy and Tim Noyen and two other young folks from North Quincy High School who are forming the newly formed. Thank you, Luke, for your leadership in that. The newly formed Student Advisory Council to the school committee. We met with them, and the two items on the agenda were the March 14th enough item. And the Student Advisory Council is going to be working with the Student Council and the administration at both high schools to make sure that that situation and that it's carried out with dignity and respect, and they're getting the information out to the kids too on that. The other item that we looked at was we want to take a close look at the high school midterm exams. We wanted to get student feedback, and so they're going to be looking at to their peers to get some feedback to us. That's one of the items on our subcommittee meeting that we've been looking at for a while, so we would like to get some feedback from them before we move forward with it. And those folks have been charged with getting that to us. So we'll be meeting one more time this year, look at those two items, and also to plan SMART goals for next year as we go into next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A couple of other things to the, I know that Dr. Hallett, as well as Mr. Tim Peru, are very proud, as we are, of Emily Crosta and Amanda Morris, who proudly performed at the All-State Festival this past weekend. So I want to thank those students very, very much. Also take a look at the parent academies. I think they're at your place. And again, we continue to be out there offering as much as we possibly can to parents. The latest was the nutrition workshop as well. You know, we look at going from tomorrow with guiding students through construction careers over at Quincy High School, and then after that following with what really ones we did last year with Healthy Choices Family Night, which was very, very successful, brain boosters for K-2 and 3 to 5, as well as learning to read. What does it mean and what do we do to address it? And that's on March 27th. So you have the list. It's on our website as well. And we're very, very proud of our staff that continually give time above and beyond to these great events for parents. Project Lead the Way got a grant by way of Maddie Roy and Ed Smith. Take a look at our STEM program and building a STEM program, working with our teachers. It's a $150,000 grant, $30,000 per middle school, which will provide a lot of professional development, curriculum materials, and some real hands-on, great hands-on activities for our students. So we're very proud of Maddie and Ed going above and beyond, but also we're really looking forward to the work that we will do with Project Lead the Way, which has been at the high schools as well. And lastly, if I can find it. The only thing I did want to mention was that if indeed both high schools had course selection March 5th and March 6th. So we're beginning that whole scheduling process. We still will continue to work with parents, work with teachers, and schedule. That's what I said. It's March 12th and 13th, so there's still time. That's why I couldn't find my card, you know. But thank you very much. So I wanted to make sure that parents know that, and I know they do, and notices go out to them. So with that, I better say thank you very much. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you, Superintendent. Seeing the end of the superintendent's report, old business is next on the agenda, and seeing none, we'll move on to new business, which is the Quincy Public Schools Safety and Security. Yes. Oh, excuse me. Mr. Rowland?
I just wanted to thank Beth Howell for all the work she's done with the music program in our city in the last 3 or 4 years, because some of our hires have been incredible, and that's made a huge difference in our instrument and progress. So, Beth, thank you very much for all the hard work you've done.
Thank you, Mr. Rowland.
Okay. I'd like to start our safety and security. Is this enough?
Closer to your mouth.
Speak into it. How's my night so far?
Everybody's getting directions.
Anyway, good evening. And, you know, one thing we do really know is that students really won't benefit from all the great experiences that we offer in the Quincy Public Schools, certainly unless they feel safe. And secondly, with our Quincy Public Schools staff and administrators, they will never be at their best unless they feel that we have plans and we practice and we make sure that emergency procedures are in place and that they understand what they are and how we proceed. So what we will present this evening is really 4-pronged. We can go to that next slide here, Mark. We'll look at the District Improvement Plan connections. How do we connect with our plan, with our goals, our initiatives, how we embed student safety in what we do within the District Improvement Plan. And then we'll go to all of the 4 aspects, the 4 components that we have: prevention, prepare, respond, and recover. So what we're going to with prevention is really it's avoiding occurrences. We'll go to, and that will be presented by Director Dracchio. Prepare is about planning and practices and evaluation, again by Director Mike Dracchio. And then respond. And we have Chief Keenan with us this evening that will talk about response. And then recover. And Senior Student Support Service Director Mara Peel will talk about informing, responding to physical and psychological needs and building climate following any incident that we may have. So here, this is the team organization, and the school committee certainly have seen this before, so I'll talk about really three standards that we have that either directly or indirectly support the student safety within the Quincy Public Schools. And the first and foremost is Quincy School Committee, who have policies that ensure student safety in so many ways. Our students, superintendent's leadership team, our elementary, high school, middle school principal teams, and also our school community partners that do such a great job for us, as Mike Dracchio will mention. Standard 5 is access, programs, and student support. So we have student support services teams, we have an alternative program team, as well as our student placement team. And that student placement team begins pre-K and goes through grade 12. And it really allows us to really get to know so many of our students and our families. And then standard 6 is financial asset management, effectiveness, and efficiency. And that brings in our safety and security team, our transportation administrative team, as well as facilities and maintenance team chaired by Kevin Segala and Paul Hines from Public Building. So there's a nice cross between our sites and the public building management, as well as our school improvement plans. As you know, when we present our school improvement plans, there's an areas of need. And a lot of the principals put an area of need that may provide additional student safety or continuing student safety. So it's in our school improvement plans as well as program improvement plans. So the next slide, here's our framework. And again, prevent and prepare will be given right now by Director Michael.
Good evening. First of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity to be able to present to you tonight. Thank you to Mayor Koch and the school committee members for this opportunity. I'm going to start with prevention, avoiding occurrences. What you see, you will see on the slide, on the first slide up here, are school initiatives and safety initiatives that we put together just a few years ago, right after Newtown. We decided to work very hard on making sure we had everything in place. Right after that, we directly went to Mayor Koch and sat down with a plan, and it was an efficient plan that Mayor Koch appropriated the money for. So we want to thank you, Mayor, for that. Really appreciate you having that opportunity to do that. And some of the things that are up on the top here now are things we instilled. Access control devices for staff to be able to get into the schools. Video intercoms that was different than the old little intercom that was at the doors. These are new intercoms with video surveillance on them. Visitor protocols for all schools and all levels. Identification badges, which is what I'm wearing here. The yellow lanyard with the picture ID and the access control card, which is placed in the back. Classroom door locks, we replaced every single classroom door lock in the school system just a few years ago that were lockable from the inside of the classroom. So that was a huge feat to be able to do that. And also we've increased surveillance incredibly over the last several years. When I took over 8 years ago, most of the schools had one camera, which is at the front door of the schools, and now we have multiple cameras at all of our schools at this point. Another part of this that the superintendent will speak about in a few minutes when I move forward is the partnership with the MSBA, and then I'll come back and speak about transportation, safety, and fire safety. Next slide, please. This is school committee policy, the safety program, file 5.2. One of the things that really stands out to me are keywords that appear, safety and practice. It's things that we instill with our students and our staff every single day to be prepared for any type of situation that comes forward. So we often conduct our safety drills, twice a year for our drills, and we're constantly in touch to make sure that they're done correctly, and we're working with our safety partners on that on a regular basis. The access control devices are placed in strategic areas of the school for exterior doors for our staff to be able to get into. All Quincy Public Schools buildings are locked during school hours. They would have to be buzzed to get in. This gives an opportunity for a staff member that may be traveling from multiple schools that they can get into the school and have no issue being able to get into the school when they need to do that. So we have several staff members that do travel from more than one school, but this is an opportunity for them if they need to get something from their car, if they were taking a break or whatever have you. They don't need to keep bothering the office. They can get in and out of the door that they need to get into. So I'm very proud of this piece that we put together for them, and I know that the staff really appreciates that as well. The video intercoms, this was part of the piece that we put together. They're all of our buildings. They're placed in the main office or in the areas where the security staff is able to buzz people in as well. So you're either going to have main office staff working on this as well as the security staff at the high school. Each intercom has a built-in camera that allows the staff member to zoom in on people, to pan to the left, up and down, depending on the situation. So it's great to get a clear view of who's coming to the door and then to follow the protocols, which I will be going over with you shortly. Visitor protocols we put together for all levels of the high school, middle school, and elementary schools. We utilize them at all levels. I want to touch on the next slide on important pieces from 2 to 8. We talk about this stuff that when people come in to knock on the door, to buzz the door. The key to this is we ask staff to state your name, purpose for being at the school. We ask them to look into the camera and make sure that they're looking in so we can get a visible picture of their face. At times, if someone comes in, it could be a winter day or a bad day like today. They may have a hood on, they may have a hat on, they may have sunglasses. We ask people to remove them so we can get the visibility so we know who we're speaking to, who we're talking to before they will be allowed into the building. We ask them to have identification, which would be a license or a picture ID. After being admitted into the building, we report either to the school office right away, which is usually right directly in front of them, or to the security desk. And then we have them sign in. We give them a red lanyard with a visitor tag on it, and we put down times and so forth, and what time they're supposed to be there, who they're going to see. And we collect them, obviously, on the way out. We make them sign out when they leave. The one thing on this that we put together was if someone fails to comply to this stuff, we can certainly make sure that they're not going to be coming back in the building until they do that. So that was one of the pieces that we wanted to make sure that we instilled for staff, so they felt comfortable, and for parents to feel comfortable. So we want to make sure everybody's on the same page for visitor protocols. Continue on with prevention and avoiding occurrences. One of the things that really made me extremely proud when we did this, and I can just address this too, because Allison Cox, who's the president of the QEA, when we went to do this, we had full support of the Teachers Association and all of the unions that we work with. Not only was it going to be something we worked with our school administration, the superintendent's leadership team, but one of the things that I had the opportunity to do it several times in the past is, and I think the chief was there at this time too, recently, over the last couple of years. We had the Norfolk County School Task Force, which we got to present to the district attorney and all of the county school systems that were involved in that. And they asked us, how do we get staff to do this? And I said, we have a great relationship, and we work with our teachers and we work with our staff. And so that was extremely important that we're allowed to do that. So each staff member gets a yellow lanyard, full-time staff, or someone that may be a permanent sub for a period of time. The one thing that we do is we make sure during new teacher orientation, where the school committees are involved in those days that we go there, that we take the photo ID on the first day of new teacher orientation, and I have that photo ID ready for that new staff member the second day, and hand that to them. You just have to see the smiles on their faces when they see that they know that it's official and they got their ID tag. So, we work with all of the school principals to make sure that everybody's wearing their lanyards and making sure that they have them. From time to time, if someone lost an ID, we do numerous times during the school year, we have photo ID sessions in the mornings prior to school to give people an opportunity to come before school. We also do it after school hours as well, or if someone needs one and they might be able to come up and, we're in the office, we'll take the photo ID and we print it right here. So that's a great tool we added to our safety. Next part, just going to, as we go forward with the identification badges and so forth, one of the things we also did was substitute protocols and support staff protocols as well. The thing with this is we make sure that they have a temporary badge when they come in, it's red, they get a key, they sign into the office, they have to return their tag and key to the office at the end of the day. In their packet that they get for the substitutes is the emergency procedures charts in there, so they all have that in their packet so they know what to do. They're explained that to by the principals as well. So we really keep the substitutes on board as well to make sure that they're complying with everything that we need to do as well. Next part is prevention and avoiding occurrences with classroom door locks. I think I touched on that before. We put a lot of time into doing this. And we were very, very fortunate when we started to look at the door locks and look at doors inside the classrooms. And when we looked at this stuff back 2 or 3 years ago, There was no, we didn't have doors that locked from the inside except for the newer school. So we really worked extremely hard to get every single classroom in compliance with that. So it's a double-sided lock. It's something you can always get out from the inside, but you can lock it with a key from the inside as well. So we worked with the mayor's funding on this. We work with all the principals. We work with public buildings. Commissioner Hines is now in place there now. We work with Kevin Murphy, with Walter McDonald. We work with Granite Lock. I wanted to mention them more than I can say. The gentleman, Rick Weiss, that owns Granite Lock, it's a Quincy company. He put in an enormous amount of time to assist us and to do things that, he didn't really charge us for, to be quite honest with you. He fixed doors. He knew how important this was to get all of this work done and to work with us and to make sure that we got all these things in place. And he did it in a great timely fashion. So I really want to thank Rick for that as well. The next part is surveillance technology. Our security cameras provide 24-hour surveillance around the clock. Like I said before, starting out we had minimal cameras. We have an enormous amount of cameras now. In my opinion, never enough. Something we want to continue to add and continue to work on. On all exterior doors, all of our hallways, all of our steel wells as we move forward. We have remote capability, which is great. I have a nice office down here, a few doors down. I can see all the schools at once on the multiple big screens that I have in my office, which is great. We also share that information and work with our city IT, with Chuck Phelan, and our school IT with Keith and Bobby Cavallo. And all of that information is provided to the police. So if there ever is an incident or anything that needs to be done, they can remotely remote into our school and be able to see the schools at any time as well. And it has benefited us many times in the past so far. So I did want to mention Bob Cavallo, especially from the city IT. He's really the guy that helps me every single day, making sure that they're working, that they're recording, that if something goes out, power outage, we had a storm, we had to go back and get some things back on. So he's been instrumental as well.
As you know, we're incredibly lucky to have such a great partnership with the MSBA, both the Accelerated Repair Program as well as the CORE program. And obviously we need to thank you, the school committee, Mayor Koch, for his leadership, and the city council for really a lot of the funding that they help us be very, very supportive of us as well. So right now we have 7 schools that have all new windows and doors, Central. Of course, Lincoln, Hancock, Marymount, North Quincy, Parker, Quincy High School in Wollaston. Montclair is also brand new windows. Beechwood Knolls new windows will be in this summer, 2018, as well as our new Southwest Middle School in 2019. Again, so many buildings that have these new doors that are very, very helpful. That next slide shows you that all the work that the city of Quincy has done within the schools in the past few years. So we're very, very fortunate to continue to have about 10 of our schools with these new windows and doors, and boilers as well. With student safety, security, the boilers certainly keep us warm in the winter months. So that's a good thing. And the next slide shows you the projects that the MSBA has somewhat helped with, but much more, again, funding from inside through City Hall, Mayor Koch, and to take a look at additional cameras, take a look at video intercoms, and I know Michael mentioned this, interior door locks, as well as keyless entry systems. And those are all of our sites, including Della Chiesa Early Childhood Center. So we're fortunate to continue the partnership, obviously, our students and staff with you, as well as the MSBA and our city council. So thanks for that.
So I'm going to move on to transportation and pedestrian safety. As you know, I have a double role. Safety and Security Director, and I'm the Transportation Director as well. So there's quite a bit of work each day. We start off bright and early in the morning to get our buses going. First of all, I want to thank our bus drivers and our bus monitors for providing safe school transportation each and every day. One of the things that we instill with them is to make sure that we're complying with everything that they're supposed to do, with rules of the road, as well as keeping up their license and doing things that they need to do every day. So that's really important. I want to thank our DPW Commissioner, Alvarez Leoso, and especially Steve Cubitt from Traffic and Parking for continuously assisting us in our schools with safety signage and making sure that our crosswalks are painted and visible on a regular basis. The next slide also is school committee policy about school bus safety. As you know, we do evacuation drills twice a year with the school bus drivers. One of the things for them, they have to do this as part of their training as well, but it's also important that we do all of the schools and all of the kids in making sure that they're safe by doing school bus evacuation. They have to keep up their license with doing that as part of their hours. Next slide. Next part of this is crosswalks and pedestrian safety. One of the things that I send out, this is a memo that gets sent out to all principals at the beginning of the school year. It just talks about key points and trying to make sure that we're working together on making sure that everybody understands how important it is for traffic safety and school safety and walking to school and using crosswalks and trying to be in a crosswalk area where we are very fortunate to have traffic supervisors that are provided by Chief Keenan under his budget in the Quincy Police Department. The next one is one of the slides that I put on to Channel 22. We put this out a few times a year as reminders as well to communicate with students, staff, and parents. And we are constantly working with school principals on traffic safety. Next piece is just a copy of the agenda. It's pretty much an agenda that we may change around at different times, but this is part of my transportation administration team, and you see the members at the top. It meets once a month on the first Monday of each month, when we talk about topics that come up for our buses and issues that we have with transportation, with whatever it may be. We also always are looking at different things that we need to do. We have to talk about state inspections and things like that as we move forward with the school year. We also meet periodically during the summertime to get ready in preparation for the next school year. Next piece is fire safety. I wanted to personally thank Chief Barron, who I spoke to yesterday. I had that opportunity to be with Chief Keenan and Chief Barron and all the emergency management team over the weekend at several meetings as we were working together on making sure that everybody was safe from the storm. So I wanted to thank Chief Barron, who was constantly available with communication whenever needed. I talked to Chief yesterday and spoke to him about what I was going to talk about for presentation today. I want to thank all the members of the fire department for helping us and keeping us safe each and every day. Thank you to Quincy Fire Department for providing fire safety, to our third graders, to 700 students, roughly 700 students in grade 3 each year. I also wanted to thank Brent Campbell, who is from the fire alarm division. Brent and I talk constantly about making sure that our fire alarms and things are working. He's in close contact with me about when he adds new systems in and making sure the sound is a little different, that we take another fire drill just to make sure that they hear it, because the sound sometimes is actually different when they install new devices. So that's something that we work on all the time. And then lastly, that we stay in compliance each year with the state fire marshal. We do 4 fire drills. Two of those, of which I'm at, when we do our safety drills and work with them directly with that during our safety drills. Next page is on fire safety. It's on school safety. I'm not going to really touch on this too much, but these are the things that we send out to the principals in the beginning of the school year. They have quick reference guides, all the information on the quick reference guides, and the next following 2 pages is information that they want our schools to be in compliance with. They meet quarterly with our head custodians and walk around the buildings to make sure that we're in compliance with all of the things that need to be in compliance in the school. Fire extinguishers, you name it, making sure that our stations are working properly. Next page, page 27, exit announcements. It's one of the things that the Chief and I had talked about, just to make sure that we have big assemblies at the schools, that we're sharing it when people come in, folks come in to see their children, and make sure the announcements are announced when we have big assemblies or plays and so forth. So that's one of the things that we've worked on, and it's worked out extremely well. Next piece is more geared towards our science labs with the laboratory wash systems and blankets. That's part of the inspection stuff too that the fire department does, is going through and making sure that all of our stuff is up to date and in compliance as we work together to make sure that all of our fire safety apparatus and things are working properly. So, thank you. Going to move on now to the preparation stage, planning, practices, evaluation, and a continuous cycle of training drills. First part is the emergency procedures. We've worked enormously with my safety team and principals and all the staff over the last several years on updating emergency procedures and making sure that the charts are posted in each classroom and office space in all of our Quincy Public Schools. The main office and security personnel at all schools have been trained in the response protocols as well. We do reminders to staff reviewing these emergency procedures and responsibilities at the beginning of each school year, the staff meetings, as well as during professional development times. This will be an added safety piece to keep communication open all the time. One of the things that I take an enormous amount of pride in is when we have the new teachers during new teacher orientation. I have a lot of time to go over all of the emergency procedures with them prior to them actually getting in the classroom and being able to go over all that stuff with the new staff each year and get to let them talk and make sure they understand what we're doing in our schools for our emergency procedures. The next chart is school committee policy. These are the drills that we do with our emergency responders. Lockdowns, shelter in place, evacuations, reverse evacuations, and modified lockdowns. The following emergency procedures chart, as I said, is school committee policy. During emergency procedures, we are accompanied by our emergency responders from the Quincy Police, obviously with Chief Keenan's assistance, Lieutenant Glenn, and our school resource officers, DARE officers, who actively take part in our safety drills, along with many additional officers from the Quincy Police as well. I want to thank Chief Barron and members of the fire department to oversee the fire drill portion of this and evacuations. And lastly, I want to thank Brewster Ambulance, who stepped up enormously for us since they've taken on the ambulance service in Quincy. They've done a great job, and they've done a lot of great things for us as well. They all take part in each and every drill that we do. The next piece is a much clearer, much better bomb threat procedure policy that we put together. We worked extremely hard with Quincy Police on this. We looked at things from Homeland Security, Department of Homeland Security, and other school systems and what they had. Ours was a little outdated at the time, so we put this together. It's a great little checklist. It worked out extremely well. Thanks to Chief Keenan, Lieutenant Glenn, and Lieutenant Dillon, along with the resource officers for their input in making this a friendly checklist for all of our staff. Next piece of this, I thought was great. Another piece that we put together. We had an opportunity to get a grant from the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office. A couple years ago, were able to purchase 911 radios that work right with the system here at Quincy, right to the communications department. All the principals have them. There's one in each school. Some of the administrators have them as well. I wanted to thank District Attorney Morrissey for providing the funding for it, and also thank Chief Keenan for assisting with the 911 protocols and the Quincy Police Communications Department for programming all of the radios. And they're a great tool for us in case of an emergency. They all will have direct access right to the Quincy Police. The next piece here you know, we talked about this, we do look at the emergency safety drills normally in the spring or the fall. Doesn't mean we can't do it at any time, obviously. We are working on making sure that they're done. We keep in compliance with doing it twice with our policy. Sometimes we do it more. If we see something we might need to work on, we'll do it a third time, and we can do it more if we need to. The drills are unannounced to staff. It's a communication piece that I work with the principal of the school. We keep that quiet. It used to be different where we would announce them. Now we try to make sure that they're unannounced, that they should be prepared at any time to be ready for our drills. So we work with our emergency responders. I set up all of that information and work with all the departments to make sure that they're on board with us. And you know, I could be walking in a building and they think, here he is, just walking in and say hello. And then next thing you know, put them in lockdown and then we're ready to go. And then I have the responders come up right afterwards. So we've changed quite a bit from what we used to do a few years back. This is just a list of the schools and the dates that we did them in the fall. We're working on spring dates now with principals right now. And once again, it's just a piece that, you know, we're not going to be showing staff. So we want to make sure that they're ready and prepared for. And they can be done at any time, the drills too. We do drills with passing classes. We do drills at lunchtime. And we'll continue to work on drills in unstructured times as well. The next piece is another school committee policy that we have. It's internal incident reports created by the Quincy Public Schools to report threats of harm, self-harm, other concerning behaviors. For the most part, when we get an incident report that comes in, it's reported to the superintendent, the Deputy Superintendent Mulvey, to myself, Senior Director Mark Peel, Special Education Director Erin Perkins, and Executive Director of Career and Technical Education Pete Segala. So, you know, we get a chance to view this stuff and we work together on anything that comes in, whether it's a behavioral issue or something that we need to do to work with kids, the students. Part of this is a good tool for us to use when we do placement things and so forth. We have our placement team meetings as well. The last thing I want to talk about is safety and security team. This was probably one of the things that we expanded quite a bit over the last several years. This team is the largest team in Norfolk County. It's well known. You know, most of the school systems may be a little bit smaller than us, but you know, that was one of the things when we have county-wide safety team meetings. They look at me and say, how do you get all these people together in one room? So we're very fortunate to be able to do that. The next page goes over basically a sample agenda. Not necessarily always the same, but pretty similar to this. On numerous occasions, we have guest speakers as well. We've had many presentations from partners in the past. Lieutenant Glenn from the Quincy Police has done many of those presentations for us. We've had presentations from Department of Youth Services, the MBTA Police, the Sheriff's Office, the District Attorney's Office, as well as other partners, the Fire Department as well. The next page just goes to show you how many people we have as we start this. I think it's about 3 pages long here. So we have, like I said, the largest safety team in Norfolk County. The team is comprised of school administrators, assistant principals, deans, Quincy Police, Quincy Fire, Norfolk County District Attorney's Office, Norfolk County Sheriff's Office, Brewster Ambulance, Transit Police, Department of Youth Services, Department of Children and Families, and Quincy Probation Department. Next slide shows all these members that we have here. So it's really, we're very fortunate. Go back to one more, back to 41 for me for a minute. I just wanted to say, part of the safety team, as you know, we have 8 security officers that work very hard each and every day to keep our high schools safe. The security staff works closely with school administration and the school resource officers who are in the building each day. They're constantly patrolling hallways. They're constantly working with the students, and they really do know their students. That's a great tool for us that we have security staff in our high schools. Next page. Just to touch on a few of the people on the safety team up here as well. We have received several grants over the years from the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office, Michael Morrissey's office, from Norfolk County Sheriff's Office, Michael Blotti. Grants have been used for several things such as cameras, installation of cameras, the 911 radios, senior stay out, substance abuse awareness, just to name a few. And lastly, we get into areas of topics with professional development. A lot of that stuff comes to play in the meetings that I have for the staff that are there, as well as the next page for our security staff. Some of the topics for the security staff that we worked on the Aspen training, security camera training, CPI, Crisis Prevention Institute, first aid, CPR training. They're all certified in that. And thanks to Brewster Ambulance for providing that service to us for free. They did that for our bus drivers as well over the summer, and they did all of our security staff as well. Other topics that we've worked on in the past, safety and security topics. Some of the new stuff that's out there, the juuling and the vaping. I sent a beautiful article that I picked out from to all the security staff last week. That came from the Boston Globe. I thought it was a great article. Some of the stuff that Lieutenant Glenn's gone over was edibles, substance abuse awareness, suspect recognition and identification, de-escalation of students, report writing, and youth gangs. And then we get to the last couple slides of my part of the presentation. Each week I put out something to my security staff and to the high school principals with a weekly staff notice to the security staff, just touching on things that we need to, whatever topic it may be coming up. Making sure that they're vigilant every day, doing what they're supposed to do, and I know that they do that, but we want to keep reminding of those things that they need to do, and making sure they're on top of stuff. Also, the first page of my Safety First newsletter is in there too. That's just one of the pages that we put out 3 times a year. The one thing I do want to say before I wrap up my part of this and move on to letting the chief come up is I want to personally thank the chief, because I can't think of another town, or city or town, where someone from another department can just call up at any time and he's always there. I really mean that, because it's an open door policy. I call the chief and he says, come on down, we'll talk, let's go, come on down there. So I think we're very, very fortunate to have that, and we do that with all of our departments. All of the department heads in the city have worked extremely close with me, and I'm very fortunate that I have a great relationship with them, but Chief especially has been an incredible asset and an incredible friend to work with every day, so I want to thank the chief for that.
I'm going to introduce the chief of police, but I think Michael did a fantastic job. So I will introduce a really great friend of the Quincy Public Schools, Chief Keenan.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the school committee, and Dr. DeCristofaro. Thank you for inviting me tonight to provide some of an update on the Quincy Police response to critical incidents in the Quincy Public Schools. As both Mike and the doctor alluded to, we do have a tremendous relationship. Out of all the departments heads in the city of Quincy, and there are a number of them, over the past 10 years that I've been the chief, Dr. DeCristofaro leads the league when it comes to cooperation and communication. There isn't a week that goes by that we don't communicate in some way by either text or by phone calls or personal meetings, as well as Mike Dragio. Mike, like he had said, he's in and out of my office all the time. It's anytime there's an event in the schools, anytime there's an issue, and even positive things like graduations, football games, basketball games, anytime the Quincy Public Schools need anything, Mike shows up in my office and we always are glad to provide it. As well as a lot of things go on day to day that you don't know about, you don't realize that go on. And I know that our special operations, a special investigations unit led by Detective Lieutenant Pat Glenn, he's an all-star. He's got tremendous staff, and I know that they work on a day-to-day basis with Director Mauro Papil on different incidents that come up with the kids and with family, and try to provide guidance and support on different issues that sometimes do arise, good or bad. We provide a number of services to the Quincy Public Schools. One of the things that I'm proud of and that we've continued to do is we have a DARE program, which is kind of unusual this day and age. A lot of schools, school departments and police departments are eliminating that. But I think it's a valuable piece. I think it's a good educational tool. I think it brings our police officers into your school buildings, and it provides an outlet for some of these young children to deal with a police officer in a positive way. We've met several times, the superintendent, Mauro Papil, Lieutenant Glenn and the DEER officers were met in the recent past, and we're looking to revamp that program a little bit. We want to make it a little bit more Quincy-oriented and user-friendly. As you know, whether you agree or you disagree, pot is becoming legalized in July, and I think it's going to lend itself to a lot of different issues that the school is going to have to deal with. We want to try and get out ahead of it and put together a program that incorporates not only the DEER philosophy, but also kind of a Quincy philosophy, and get ahead of the pot issue that hopefully will work out better than I think it's going to. We also just, John Grazioso has been a DEER officer for a number of years, I think 15. I'll have to look at his bio, and I know he's going to be brought before you very shortly. John will be retiring, and he's done a tremendous job for all these years. But it's time for him to move on. He's just bought a boat, so he's looking forward to his retirement. But we've selected Melanie Reeves with the assistance of the superintendent, Lieutenant Glenn. We sat down and she was interviewed, and she came out tops in the interviews. We think she's got a passion for it. She'll be introduced to you very, very shortly within the coming weeks or month. So those are just some of the things that we do. We also have 3 school resource officers. The school resource officers work in the high schools, one in each high school, and then we have one for the middle school. And they're a tremendous asset. They're in the schools every day, and they're interacting with the children. We also have 45 traffic supervisors that supervise the crossing of the children and keep them safe. We also offer a number of different programs through Lieutenant Dan Minton. He sometimes does some programs in the school. We have the Quincy Police Self-Defense Program that we offer. We also have, as Mike alluded to, all of our principals have been provided with police radios that can directly speak with our dispatcher should an incident occur. We also have a couple other programs that we run. The Early Bird Basketball. It's a nice program that the officers go in and play basketball with the children in the mornings. And then we have the pre-prom seminar that I think makes a point that's very poignant at prom season. Some of the training that the Quincy Police Department receives and our officers receive, we do in-service training, we do Recruit Academy training. In the Recruit Academy training, we have school response and active shooter training. It's a big portion of what the officers, young and new officers, are taught in the regional police academies. And I'm pleased to say we have 12 officers that will be coming out in the late spring and early summer that will be joining the force. So we're beefing up our force a little bit, and they'll be training out in the street and by themselves by September. Also along those lines, we do take part in the, as Mike had alluded to, the school safety drills. We're pleased to be involved in that with our community police officers, our school resource officers, officers that happen to be working that day on the street will go. And I think it's a valuable interaction to see how the school safety drills work and the evacuations drills work. We also train our officers in de-escalation and safety assessment training. And part of that is assessing the threat to make sure that if we do receive a threat, that we handle it properly, we make a proper assessment, we handle it properly, and it's properly dealt with. We also have training on autism, mental health issues, active shooter, response to school violence. Those are all part of our ongoing training. They happen annually or sometimes even more. And we're going to beef that up in light of what's happened in the country recently, and also the rhetoric that's going on within the nation. I think it's a perfect time to do that. As far as our response to a critical incident, we have an initial response. Back in the day when Columbine first occurred, the response, the proper response to that was to wait, organize a SWAT team, go in, assess the threat, and then neutralize the threat. They found through all kinds of studies, particularly with Columbine, that didn't work. It wasn't a good response. So over the years, that's changed, and we've trained our officers to what's called a diamond formation, a diamond response. What happens is where officers get on scene, they form a diamond, essentially, one officer looking in each direction. They go down a hallway, they clear the hallway, and then they go to the threat, wherever the threat lies. That has been effective, but it's now changing, and we're going to be changing our philosophy so that the first officer on the scene, if he recognizes that there's a threat, he's going to respond to the threat immediately. And then we're lucky in the city that we have such good response. Within minutes, we'll have a number of police officers here. But the first officer in is going to go right to the scene of whatever the incident would be to try and quell that incident or mitigate the incident. We also have, if something were a little bit more prolonged, we have a SWAT team that we've ramped up. We've received Homeland Security funding through the Boston Area Security Initiative. It's called URC as an acronym. And that's provided us with a lot of SWAT equipment and extensive training. Our officers, SWAT officers, train at least 2 to 3 times a month. They've been a number of times in the various school buildings, and they also train at least once a month up at the Old Quincy Hospital, because it's a great facility. It's vacant. They allow us to use it. It's a great facility to be able to go in and do some of the maneuvers and learn how to clear rooms. We also have available, should the need arise, hostage negotiators that will be on the scene within a very brief period of time should a barricaded situation happen or somebody get taken hostage, whether it's in a school or whether it be in a building or a business throughout the city. We also recently have joined MetroLEC, and that's the Metropolitan Law Enforcement Council. And what it is a collaborative group of police departments throughout the whole South Shore. I think there's 58 in total, and they all bring their resources. We provide them with a Marine unit, they provide in our SWAT team, our motorcycles, bicycle units, and they provide us with the same resources. So should an incident occur that's a large incident, we'd have that resource available. We also have 8 K9 EOD, explosive ordnance dogs. Those dogs are trained to detect any kind of an ammunition, a gun, a bomb, anything that has explosives or anything that has gunpowder in it. And those are available should the need arise. We also have a memorandum of understanding with the Boston Police Bomb Squad. Thankfully, we don't utilize them very often, but should we need that, they're available to us and they respond within minutes. They're tremendous. We also, the internet and the cyber response, which is becoming more and more prevalent. We receive threats on occasion through the internet, through Facebook, through the various social media outlets, making threatening statements to schools. They're going to blow up a school, they're going to take down the school. We take those threats very seriously. We work with Morup Appeal. Pat Glynn works directly with Morup Appeal. What we do is we make a threat assessment, we make a determination on how valid we think the threat is. Once we make that determination, we sometimes we engage in home visits to go to the home of the student. We check their bedrooms to make sure that they don't have access or opportunity to fulfill those threats. And then usually what happens is they're given a mental health evaluation, and then the schools get involved and they make a determination whether there'll be discipline, punishment, whether there's further help needed if it's a child that needs emotional support or mental health counseling, that type of thing. We do take those threats very seriously. They don't become very, and they don't become sensationalized. We don't do that. We handle them professionally and we handle them thoroughly. And I'm very confident that we're on the right path with that. As far as forward planning goes, we're always looking to improve what we're doing. We want to make things better, and we're always looking forward. What we're doing now is we're updating all of our school plans, the blueprints and that type of thing, photographs, blueprints, and we're doing that. We're in the process of doing it. We actually just got a mobile application. We're on a mobile cell phone, a smartphone. I have it right on my phone now. I can actually look at all the school diagrams, pictures of all the schools. I can pull it up and I can have that at my fingertips in an instant. We're also looking, we had spoken to Dr. D. If the need arises, we'll do an EOD sweep, a bomb sweep. I know that a lot of the communities have had issues where they've found things in the school or they suspect that there might be something in the school. We're always available to do that should the need arise. We also do school response training drills, and we're going to ramp that up a little bit. We're through Mike Drapio. We've gone through a lot of these schools with our officers that happen to be working that day, plus a school response team to get them through the schools, get them familiarized, and then we basically come in and play. We come in and practice, pretend there's an active shooter, pretend that there's something going on in the school, and then we address it and we practice and we try and handle that so we're on top of things. So I feel very confident that we're on the right track, that the Quincy Public Schools are very, very safe. It's a safe learning environment for our teachers, our students, and people that come in and out of our schools. I'm very optimistic that we're on the right track. I feel very comfortable with where we are, but we're always going to continue to get better. Thank you.
Good evening. It's nice to see everyone. My piece of this presentation, I'm going to be talking about the recovery piece, what happens kind of after the immediate incident, critical incident. And it's pretty evident why we need school critical response plans. Children may experience their first loss or critical incident in the context of the school environment. How they cope with their first experience really defines how they're going to deal with loss and grief and crisis in the future. So we have, while it's usually, unfortunate and tragic circumstances, we also have opportunity. So the goal is to model a healthy response for children and staff as we move forward. I'm so happy that the superintendent has supported a lot of the efforts that have gone on here, and well before my time, the superintendent has had leadership in creating these plans. So I think around 2009 is when we really formalized through our guidelines and procedures for student support. And I'm grateful for that because that gave us some real groundwork, and we've kept on trying to build on that. So we have a definite Quincy Public Schools crisis response. We have crisis teams at each site. We have protocols for communication so that when an event happens, people are able to communicate with the larger community if necessary. We collaborate with community supports, and I'm going to talk about all of those things and what we do in the aftermath of the critical incident. As I said, we have established crisis teams at each site. And these crisis teams are really responsible for supporting the whole school. So it's usually like the principal, the assistant principal, guidance counselors, the nurse, some key teachers that feel comfortable in that role. And they work together so that they create a response where kids can be heard and listened to, so that we disseminate information in a very truthful and accurate way. We're really careful about what we say and how we say it. We make sure that the information that kids get is accurate, because we don't want rumors and we don't want things escalated. We want kids to understand what it is that is happening. We want to be really clear about that. This is a time of trust between the adults and the students as they go through this. So I feel very good about what we have in place. When something happens, we're not scrambling because we have these plans in place. And it has to happen in a timely manner. With social media, and sometimes those things get ahead of us. And we want to make sure that the information that's kind of out there, if there's any misinformation, that we have that, we do that in an age-appropriate way. So we prepare the staff really well. We verify information through our contacts with the superintendent and the police and the director of safety and security. They provide us with the accurate information, and kids really want to be able to hear from the people that they know and trust. We do use outside supports when needed. We will bring in like social mental health or the Good Grief program when needed if we need extra support, but we really try to be the ones that the kids know. They want to hear from their teachers and guide staff and their principals because they already have that established relationship. So the crisis team, will be drafting what is said for the teachers because, people are responding and, usually it's pretty high emotions running. So they'll help respond, maybe a script for teachers, maybe some anticipated questions that kids may have and how to answer those questions. And we really just try to give them that opportunity to process that in a safe way. We look out for kids that might be more at risk or might have a bigger reaction because of previous losses and things like that, or how connected they are to the incident. So we're really careful to watch out for those kids and staff members too. So if anybody needs any support, the crisis team is there to kind of figure out, how this is going, who needs what, who maybe needs a break, who maybe needs support in the classroom when they're delivering a hard message, what kids do we have to look out for, what parents do we need to reach out to. Using all the community supports, PTOs are really instrumental, and they always show up and they're always supportive and helpful. So it really is a school community response to anything that happens. Social mental health in the Good Grief program, Maria Trozzi, she actually is at Joanna's Place, which is a newer agency that gives free grief services, but she's done professional development for us. She helped us establish the original plan that we have in 2009, and she's come back and she's done some work with the guidance staff to make sure that we have the best information and we're as prepared as we can be for any kind of critical incident, loss in general, anything that might come our way, and she has the resources connected to that. So that's been really, really helpful. Social and mental health has helped us by stepping in, meeting staff. And Care Dimensions is doing grief groups at both of our high schools. So the grief groups is more like, you know, life things that happen for kids on an individual basis, not maybe a critical incident, but you know, there's a continuum of response that is needed. And we're talking about critical incidences right now, but we're also prepared to really support our students, anything that are coming their way. So what is it that children need? They need to be spoken to and understand terms that is age and developmentally appropriate. They need to understand what has happened. They need a safe place to express their concerns and their worries. They need time to do that. And this doesn't always happen in an orderly way for some people, and people grieve very differently, so we're really careful to normalize kids' reactions because it's okay. You know, you might not feel sadness right away because maybe you're not as connected to the situation, or you might be overwhelmed with sadness and not have known the person as well because of, you know, previous losses that you've had. So we're just really sensitive that it's, however you're feeling is really okay, and we're going to help you get through that. Sometimes kids want to hear the news, process a little bit, and then, you know, get right to task. So, you know, we have to be open to what it is that kids and staff need. So we're always working on that. Every year I have something about that in terms of trauma and response and what we can do to help. And you know, hopefully won't have to respond to anything like that's happened in Florida. And I feel like you know, hopefully that will not happen. But we are prepared because there are things that do happen that make us want to be prepared to respond to the to kids' needs. So that is going to conclude my portion of the presentation, and I think I'll turn it over to the superintendent. Thank you so much.
This time, open up to any questions you may have for any one of us.
Mr. Guttrow?
Thank you, Mrs. Lebo. First of all, thank you for the comprehensive presentation, but most of all, thank you for the daily efforts of everybody to keep Quincy students safe each and every day. And you know, several of you mentioned the Parkland, Florida high school shooting. I mean, it seems like every time there's some kind of episodic issue, every deliberative body, whether it's a council or a school committee, wants an update on student safety. So thank you for being proactive and coming before this group. I also want to give credit to the mayor for his being proactive, and it was mentioned, I think, by a couple of folks. When I served on the city council, the mayor brought forward a request for all the security upgrades, the locks and all of that, which was outstanding, as well as the mayor, again, was proactive on all the facility improvements, which aid and improve security around each of the buildings. And I was proud to vote on those as a city council, but it was the mayor's leadership on those that made them a reality. I just have a few questions on a number of different issues. I appreciate some feedback on it. The first question is, how do we handle issues when the public goes into schools, like kindergarten registration or voting?
I think we handle it the same way. We greet them, the visitors come in, they come in by way of access, intercom access. We check to see who they are, and they also have information with them in regard to registering their student as well.
I mean, I'm just thinking, one experience that I had, it's a different entrance at some schools, is it not, for voting? Is that the case for all the schools? So in Beechwood Old School, for example, right? Don't you enter, is it through a different entrance? Maybe it's an exit that you... But it seems like there's a stream of folks that just...
You're talking about just the general?
Yeah, when the
school?
general public say they come in to vote, or if it's kindergarten registration, is it all the exact same entrance? Is it supposed to be the same?
I'm not really sure about the voting. I mean, I think it's probably the gym entrance there and out. But if they come in, there are police there. Anyway, there are police officers at all the voting places. So if they come in the front door, where the students come in, where the staff
So,
come
but
in.
I'm asking, so is everybody supposed to be buzzed in? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
During voting days?
No, I think voting day, the door is open. That's why the police officers are there.
Okay. And I mean, it's a challenge at that
It
point
is.
to detect a voter versus a problem, right?
Could be. The police officers are there, and hopefully they work that out. And I think the committee's worked with that over the years about the voting and making sure the security for staff and students. I think we've talked about that, so that's awesome.
Because I mean, people stream in during voting. Kindergarten registration might be a little bit different, but you still have a whole host of folks that come in.
Council, I know that in the schools, we do have police officers. I know that we do have police officers at every polling place, and some places there are 2 and 3 police officers. I know that, like, particularly if there was an area of concern, I know that I'll show my age, Bernazani School, I know that that's a little bit more accessible only, so we provide extra security for that school. So any of the schools that do have like a larger area, we do have extra police officers that are keeping an eye on people. And they do come and go. Usually it's one exit, an entrance and an exit, the same one. So we do generally corral people, make sure that they're safe. Thank you.
On that issue? I'll yield for a moment, but I still have another question.
Go ahead, Mr.
So, Chief, if you can come. So with that, depending upon how many officers, how many extra officers you have at each location, is there a procedure in place where if they're interchanging their position at the entrance, is the other officer basically off of that post circling the perimeter on certain areas that you think that might be more high priority than others?
What happens is they're assigned to the ballot box, so they're not allowed to leave that ballot box unattended, and the ballot box is always in a public place in the school. So the officers are always around that area. They're coming and going all day. We also have relief officers that come and go all day. So if an officer was in a polling place, and not just necessarily in a school, it could be in any one of the facilities, if he had to be relieved for lunch or whatever, the relief officers show up as well, and they come and go. And they're usually in and around the building, mostly in by the ballot boxes, because that's primarily what their function is there. Although in the schools, we do provide extra offices on a couple of the different schools, like I had mentioned. If the school is in session, I know sometimes they're not, on a Tuesday or whatever it may be. But yes, so the officers are vigilant, they're around the area, mostly interior though.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Second question is around communication, and I guess the definition of critical incidents, I think, was accidents, illness, suicides, traumatic events, and all that. But there are incidents that happen at schools more often than red light, and let me first say, as a parent, the communication by the principals is timely and exceptional through whether it be email or text or phone calls. It's excellent. And I suspect that that's relatively uniform across the system. The only question that I have is that parents often get a cryptic explanation of what happened, and students know precisely what happened. And so it gets down to my last question, then I'll circle back, which is, and I assume there's some confidentiality, and maybe the students aren't factually accurate, but they know what transpired, but sometimes the explanations are so vague that you really, as a parent, don't know what happened at the school. And so I don't know how we remedy that, but it would be helpful. And as a member of this body, it would be useful to to the extent that you can share it, a list of incidents that happened maybe over the past 5 years, so that we could see what are the types of incidents, at which schools, is there a trend, any of those things that would be useful. I don't know, maybe there aren't many, maybe it's just a couple of the high schools, but while I appreciate the timeliness and the explanation that something happening, knowing what happened is a hard nut to crack.
And I think the other hard nut to crack is the uniqueness of every situation. It is very, very difficult, and we work very, very hard at wording messages that go out from the school system in a way that there is confidentiality. So we have to be very, very careful about how we share the incidents. And there are times where we send a message out and we say, well, we should have, would have, could have, a bit more detail, because some parents call and say, well, really, what happened, and there are times that we're not sure when we're sending that notice out exactly what happened. We want to make sure that parents know that there has been an incident, but we need to investigate it thoroughly, so we don't really know from beginning to end.
That's completely fair, but then there's no follow-up explaining what happened.
That's correct. That's correct. That's correct.
So
because if you don't, there are times, excuse me,
please.
Mr. Secretary, there are times where you need to just be very, very careful about your communication, and I know you know that, but so no, we don't send out in 3 days later or 5 days later about an incident that happened a week before. We do not do that.
Yeah, and I'm not asking about naming names. I'm asking about the type of incident, and I think it's a reasonable ask of a body like this to understand what are the types of incidents that transpired and what was communicated to the parents. I think that's a fair ask.
I'm not sure it's a fair ask, but that's if it's an ask and you're the school committee.
Why?
Well, because I think that there are times where to share way too much of a situation, or to say that things happen at a certain school, it may certainly be unfair to that school, may be unfair to that community. So we're Quincy Public Schools. We can talk about incidents that happen in the school system, but I think to talk about certain schools may not be the right thing to do.
I'll think about that, but
Sure.
I don't know that I agree with it. I think if I'm a parent at one of those schools that might have had a disproportionate number of incidences, I'd want to know that there were disproportionate.
Yeah, and I think that...
And I think it's fair to assume that this body would look at that.
Sure.
I think that's fair. Okay. So, and the last question that I had was on the cameras, and I think it was for Mike. It might be better for Mike. Mike, I mean, to me that's excellent that there are cameras and all. Are they monitored in real time, or are they just basically used as evidence?
Both. The high schools, there's people, the security staff's in the office, and they're right in front of them, or they're right at the desk. Obviously, the cameras that are at the elementary schools and middle schools are right in front of the secretaries and the people that are the office staff as well. So they do see them.
Is there like a time period that you have to retain all the footage for?
It depends on the actual hard drive that we have in there.
Yeah.
Some of them last up to 30 days. Some might be a little less. You remember, we're doing 24-hour surveillance, so it's constantly going, and then they rewrite because we want to try to be on top of everything. Because we do have, there could be vandalism during the nighttime.
Yep.
And then and we've caught several people doing vandalism in the nighttime over the years too. So with graffiti and things like that. So we just want to make sure that they're constantly running.
I remember that, I think it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there was vandalism down at Beecher Knoll School. And that cost real money.
Yeah.
It was problematic, so to the extent that you can either catch it while it's happening, or at least find somebody that's culpable, that's helpful. So, again, I appreciate all that you do. Excellent presentation, thank you.
Mr. Bugoni.
Thank you, Ms. Lebo. Again, thank you for the presentation. To follow up on Doug's question about incidents at school, like Dirk and I just spoke today about that particular issue, and I think he's going to be coming forward with some information that will be helpful to us. I have some questions specifically for Maura, first of all. Many of the active shooters that have been in incidents in recent time have had mental health issues. And I'm just wondering, is the Quincy Public Schools adequately staffed to recognize and address those issues, or do we need additional staffing? In your professional opinion, and I hate to put you on the spot, but it's kind of right behind you. And it is a you know, a staffing issue, and it's a money issue. But I know we only have one school psychologist, I believe, at North, and I believe is that the case at Quincy High School as well?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay.
The school psychologists have a different kind of role. School psychologists do, their big job is to do the testing.
Right, I know that.
Yeah, okay. So, I would say that we're adequately staffed. The guidance counselors have clinical backgrounds. And actually a few of our deans have some critical backgrounds too.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't actually, if we're concerned about somebody, we send them out to the crisis team. We use social and mental health because we're not equipped to make a medical diagnosis or an assessment around safety. So, you know, if someone needs a different level of care, only the crisis team or that person's provider and network can make that determination. So what we will do is, we identify someone that we think is at risk, is refer them to the crisis team. So we do use social and mental health a lot. We use outside providers that are working with kids a lot to do, you know, they have a better sense of really that psychiatric status, I would say, than we would.
Okay, is there a crisis team in place at Beach High School?
So when, I don't want to mix up the terminology, but when we have something like a critical incident happen, there is a crisis team that gathers at each site to kind of respond to the school community. The crisis team through social mental health is housed on Quincy Ave. Okay, so that's where kids go for that emergency evaluation process, or they're actually mobile, so they'll go to the home or they'll go to an emergency room.
Thank you.
Okay,
Appreciate
thanks.
your explanation. I had a call from an official, a referee actually, and he was concerned about athletic events. And he described himself as a person who was walking into a gymnasium, and not just in Quincy, but throughout the South Shore. And he has his duffel bag, and he walks through the door, and no one knows who he is. And he could have anything in that bag, frankly. And I'm not sure that we are equipped as a school system, or any school system, but to evaluate that person walking through the door. We don't know who that person is walking through the door because they're contracted by us on a bi-weekly basis. And I was one of those people who walked in, you know, had my hat down, my head, and I didn't. But I don't know what the solution is, but I understand what the gentleman's concern is, and it's a concern that after he brought it to my attention, I said, he's right. That at our after-school events, whether it be an athletic contest, whether it be a play, we have a whole bunch of people that we are not screening. We just have a visual contact of, and I'm wondering if there's something that could be put in place that would have us better equipped to evaluate the situation before it occurs.
Yeah, I think it goes to what Mr.
Are you going to have the answer?
No, I will. A lot of these questions is not as simple.
No, I understand.
Answer to, but as Mr. Guthrie was saying, there are really some challenges in when we look at unstructured areas in the school system during the school day. We work with that. But outside of the school day, things are quite different. When there's a concert at North Quincy High School or any of our schools, that's another very challenging situation. So what the answer is that I really don't know. If we have security, a lot of times we have security there. Is that the answer to it all? Most likely not. But for an official coming in for a basketball game, he or she should only come in at a certain door. mean,
Correct.
You know, so if that's not a great sign if they just kind of walk in and not check. Usually the athletic director is there, or the team, the game administrator is there, or there's security there at that front door. And maybe that's the problem with the side door, you know, like on a Hunt Street type, that wasn't locked and it should have been. So, but there's a lot of very, very challenging situations that we need to grow to at some time. What the answer is, I'm really not sure right now, Mr. B.
I'm just speaking my own experience and seeing it on a twice a week basis that, you know, the Hunt Street door at North Quincy High School is not locked, and there's no security there, and the people walk through, and the athletic director may be there, but he may be in the gym, because he sometimes is the game administrator himself, and trying to get everything squared away inside the gymnasium, so the game goes on without any hiccups. So I brought this up, like, I don't know when it happened, Newtown happened 5 years ago. I'm not even sure how long ago that was when we started putting all these other things in place after that, you know, that tragedy. But I brought up the idea of having a metal detector put in place, and I'm wondering if we should investigate that again to ensure that, you know, weapons don't get into our schools without our knowledge, and maybe we should just do some research on it, whether or not that's something that we should take a look at. I'm not stating right now that you have to do that. I'm just wondering if we should start looking at something like that as another way to keep our students safe, particularly in an after-school activity where we don't have the maybe the security or the police department's not there for a game, unless it's a Quincy North game and there's like 2,000 people there. But when there's other events going on, it's just not practical. It doesn't make sense. But it's a soft target, as all of our schools are. And it's a concern. And I've had a concern about that for a number of years. And the last time I brought it up, it was not addressed, and I understand. But I'm bringing it up again, and I'd like to see us just take a look at it and see if we can, if that's a viable alternative for us. I'm concerned about the doors being unlocked after school. We can just walk in to school.
What school's that?
North.
Without the security guy being right there?
Well, Hunt Street's open.
Oh, Hunt Street. Well, it shouldn't be open. I don't believe that should be open.
It's unlocked.
Okay, we can check.
Yeah, it is. At 2:30, it gets unlocked.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. Yeah. So, for me as a coach, I don't have a key to it, so, I'm running around looking for a door to get into, but it's not safe. I mean, it can be tightened up a little bit, I think. And I'm not putting blame on anybody, and I just am bringing some things up that I think can be looked at, and maybe we can improve upon it. Not that Mike's done a tremendous job. He's 24/7 security and safety of our kids. And he's amazing what he does for the school system. But if there are a couple of things that we can take a peek at and maybe make better, I think would be beneficial, and maybe avoid something that we can avoid. So.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, thank you to the Superintendent, Michael, and your whole team. Chief Keenan is good and professional in policing around in his team. And I know Council mentioned the additional security for the schools. But over the years, we've also added a lot of other resources to the police department, a number of dogs, which I know come in really handy. I know that other communities reach out to us from time to time for the use of the dogs and the resources we do provide. And I know I don't disagree necessarily with what Mr. Begoli is saying. However, we got to strike a balance at some point. I was at an Atherton Howard PTO the other night, took a lot of questions about security, and you know, there has to be that balance. And we want everyone to be safe, but you can't anticipate everything. We can do the best we can, and there were a lot of questions about, you know, more money into. I mean, it got to the point even of, should we have bulletproof glass in the windows? The cost of something like that is so prohibitive, and what are we taking from resources from the classroom? I mean, I don't want to lose our sense of freedom at the same time of feeling safe in the environments. And I'm not saying yes and no to anything. I'm just throwing those comments out there. One of the areas that I thought was missing under the Recover, more respectfully, was I didn't see any spiritual aspect of it. I might have missed it, but do we engage? Do we have a team of perhaps folks from our community that our students are representative of, whether it's a Buddhist monk, a Protestant minister, Catholic priest, or a Jewish rabbi? On the Recover side, I think there's a spiritual aspect of that they could be helpful, trained, and be part of a team going into some of these schools and connecting with those kids. I'd love you to maybe explore that a little bit. But you know, I think we've made great progress as a system, as a police department. You know, and the other thing I did emphasize the other night, I know the Florida thing was a horrible thing, and there was great outrage at Washington, but the state of Florida could implement a lot of improvements. I mean, that kid wouldn't have gotten a gun in Massachusetts, and I assume you agree with me on that, Chief. I mean, people that have any bit of something on the record don't get a gun in Massachusetts, so that's a good thing. I mean, I think that we are in a much better place than most states as far as availability because of the background check, which finds mental illness or domestic violence or those other issues. So let's not lose sight of that either when we have these discussions. But I appreciate the update. I hope the parents at home feel comfortable that we have a safe environment. And I think there's always ways to add and to improve, and continue to do that. And we're all professionals, I'm sure we'll continue to do that. So thank you.
Mrs. Hoagland?
Many parents have told me that they're seeing the ALICE protocol be adopted by some other school systems and want to know where we are on that, on looking into it. And I've just been asked to ask that question. So I'll put it out there.
I've been to some of the training with it. It's quite intense training, but some of the stuff that they want little kids to do is probably really not something we've done or we probably would want to do this kind of training with students to try to fight off somebody that has a weapon in their hands.
Excuse me.
I can give you my opinion on that. I've been to some of that training.
1 second. Could you just explain to the rest of us what the ALICE?
Basically, it's a class, a program that teaches children to fight back and to defend themselves when they're faced with adversity or faced with someone with a weapon. I'm not quite so certain. There's a lot of components to it, but I'm not quite so certain that I buy into that. A lot of times when we have incidents in schools or whatever, wherever they may be, people come up with plans that they think are the best way to do things. I don't know that that's been thoroughly researched as well as it perhaps could be. I don't really think it's a good idea to put a child in harm's way to try and fight back with someone that can clearly overpower them if they have a weapon. There's a lot of different things we can do. I think making the school, the classroom safe, the lockdown drills, some of the things that we already do are much more effective. I know it's kind of like a buzzword and people seem to jump on the bandwagon with that. And it's something we can always look at and maybe modify it to a Quincy plan, that type of thing, but to go out and actually engage this, I just don't think at this point it's the best way to go about it, and I wouldn't be really supportive. Of course, if the school leadership were interested in doing it, would certainly engage with them and offer the training or assist them in getting the training, but I just don't think it's the right way to go. To have children, and it's all age dependent too. You're not going to have a kindergarten child or an 8 or 9-year-old child fight a grown man or a 19-year-old kid. Sometimes target hardening works if there was enough. Say, for example, it was a situation in a high school and they fought back. You may be successful in that, and you may not. So it's not tried and true. I prefer to see other ways of doing things like the lockdown drills. Getting people away from the target, getting them away from the hump. That's my opinion.
Thank you.
Mr. Andronico?
Thank you. I noticed in the presentation that Mr. Drake here, in one of the letters that you had sent, you established a radio line with Quincy Police Department so that if anything were to happen, you would have a direct line from the school to the police department. I was wondering if we had looked into installing panic buttons within the schools. Back in college, I had worked at the student center, and we had a panic button direct to our security team at the college, and they would call directly, and if someone would pick up, is the threat credible? Do we need to respond? Was it just an accident? And if you didn't pick up the phone, they would respond immediately. I was just wondering if we'd looked into that at all, if we have that, because I mean, you might not always be able to pick up a radio and call QPD.
I think I can address that. We actually have met. We've met with a company, I think the name of the company is Rave Mobile Operations. What they have now is they have a mobile app on a cell phone. So if you had a smartphone, all of the teachers, each teacher or each custodian, you could give it to anyone, you could give access to anyone that you want. It's a very, very costly program. I think it's probably something, we've done some research on it. Well, I just got some documentation and some pricing and some research on it. It's called Code Red, and then there's Rave Mobile. There's a couple of different companies that do it, but mostly what they're doing is they're getting away from a panic button. They're getting into more like an app on your cell phone, because 90% of these teachers or 100% of these the folks in the buildings have access to a cell phone. What it does is it alerts the police department right away of what's going on, and then we can address that problem. So we have looked into it. It is very, very costly, but I think that it's probably something that we should consider.
Thank you.
I have quite a few questions.
Not related to that. One other question.
Okay. So, I first just wanted to thank all of you for presenting tonight. I feel obligated, since this is something that is covered under my subcommittee. I'm the chair of the Safety, Transportation, and Facilities Subcommittee. So I just wanted to thank everybody through the Superintendent's Leadership Team, Chief Keenan for coming here tonight, all the other partners, including the Norfolk District Attorney. I wish she was here tonight, as well as Michael Morrissey. I wish they were both here tonight to recognize their efforts, including all the support teams, the building management teams, the crisis teams, the partnership with Brewster Ambulance, as well as all the other partners. One thing specifically in the beginning of the presentation, which I think Mike can better address, in terms of the protocol when basically screening the visitors. I know from my own experience going through the system, that is something that's always been changing. But in terms of the policy that is given to the staff, is that something that is reviewed every single year, or is it?
Yes, it's reviewed every year with their teams. When they have their team meetings, it's reviewed constantly with them.
Okay, is that something that's updated yearly? Like if there's different components, like from past experiences, like
yes,
do you go?
We look at it each year.
Okay. Yes. Are there certain scenarios where possibly, like for instance, if a visitor is kind of not hesitant to answer as many of the questions are basically being asked of the visitor, kind of handling that I don't want to say like mini crisis, but that person's not willing to cooperate. Those types of situations run over at the beginning of the year.
Exactly. That's one of the pieces we always emphasize probably the most, because if someone's not cooperating with that, they don't let them in. They would contact myself or contact the Quincy Police so we can question what their purpose would be to be on the school grounds.
That was going to be my next question. So if somebody's not willing to cooperate and they're not leaving the premises, what's the procedure for somebody somebody else other than the staff in the office? Because I'm assuming the people in the office are kind of, I don't want to say worried about this individual, but is there a procedure in place where they can call somebody, call you?
Yes, they would contact myself, or they would contact the Quincy Police if I wasn't available, and then we would try to talk to the person and find out what their purpose would be.
Okay, so the staff knows.
That's correct. Yes, they do.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, is that something that is, like if the situation itself escalates, is there a procedure in place before they even call you to let staff know?
They would call 911 if they needed to.
Okay, depending upon
yes,
the
depending on the
situation.
severity. That's correct. Yes.
Now going into the IDs with the lanyards, something that you didn't discuss, and I don't know if this is something that's already in place, but what if somebody forgets their ID, whether they be a teacher, whether they're custodial staff, what is the procedure in place that's for them? Are they treated as a visitor?
Yes, they would have to buzz themselves in, yeah, to go through the door.
At the front of the
Yes, the front of the building, yes.
Okay, so for instance, if a custodial staff, because I don't know if this is at North Quincy High School, but at Quincy High School, is there a doorbell at the back entrance?
Not the front entrance. They may have a key also. They also have keys too.
No, I'm talking about the loading dock.
No, they may have a key to the loading dock area, if it's a custodian.
Is there any procedure in place to let them know that if they do forget their ID, that they shouldn't use, like, it doesn't make sense to me that they should have access to the building if they're not going to have their badge. You know what I mean? Because they should be able to go to the front of the building with proper identification, be screened, even though they might be wearing the proper uniform, even though they may come off as an educator. Doesn't mean they should be in the building.
That's right.
Because they could easily just go out, or they could talk to somebody who has the uniform and use the key. I'm just trying to think of these different scenarios.
Sure. I understand what you're saying. Yeah, sure.
So is that something that we could implement?
Yeah, we can look at that as well. I mean, for the most part, over the years, the custodians always had the keys. They could be coming back to if the alarm goes off, they may not take their badge on, but they got to get in the building because they got to find out if the building is safe. And that's when the Quincy Police, they meet the Quincy Police.
But I'm talking about, for instance, like if they just come into the day and they're reaching in their pocket or in their jacket and they don't have their ID, that they really shouldn't be using that key. They should go to the front of the building where they can at least be on camera.
Well, most of the places are on cameras in the back too, so they would be seen going into as well.
But at least
I know
with the front of the building, there's a security officer. I'm not going to assume that there's somebody at the back of the building 24/7 making sure that at least we can see somebody. There's accountability that somebody was seen, they used a key to get in the building.
Maybe the only staff members that would possibly be doing that would be the custodians. They're the only ones who would have the keys other than the principal.
Okay. But what I'm saying is, at least in my mind for Quincy High School, once you go up the loading dock, it's not easy for somebody to see somebody else coming in that building if they're using the key.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because they go in through those doors, and that office for the custodians is separate. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it would be helpful if at least they would know the procedure is, if you get your ID, go to the front of the building. Worst case. Let me see here. So touching on what Mr. Bergoli was talking about, is the fact that with these after-school events, that some of these doors, I don't know if it's all of them, but some of these doors are being left open. You know what I mean? So what is is there a way that you could briefly, just for the best in the best interest of time, brief us about what is the policy if, for instance, if for instance, there are certain doors that are going to be left open for those school events. Is it all the doors, or is it specific doors?
It would definitely not be all the doors. I mean, basically, if you're going to the high school's staffed at least 7 o'clock with security for the front door. If they come in the back, it may be someone opening up the door for one of the athletic events. But it wouldn't be able to get around to the rest of the building. There's not a place where they're going to be going around. We can certainly secure all the rest of the building if there's an event going on as well.
Okay. Going back to custodial use, are there times where custodians may, for instance, they may leave the building and just for whatever reason, decide that they don't want to let that door that's going to be closed 24/7, closed so it will lock, and just because they don't, just for convenience, they want to leave it open. For those times, is there a way for us to determine which doors are going to be left open? Like, is there something in the security system in place that notifies security that a door is open? You know what I'm talking about? Like if they leave like a wedge or something in the door.
Right. We always emphasize no wedges to all staff. They should never leave the doors open like that.
Okay, there's a difference between emphasizing it and making it a policy.
Yeah.
So is that policy school-wide, or is that something that is by school, that the principals or just regular staff are emphasizing you know, hey, you shouldn't really leave that door open like that, even if it's just a couple inches. I mean,
The schools should never be open during the school day while the kids are in the school.
in school, after school.
Yeah.
That's just something I wanted to stress. I'm sorry. Okay, so that addresses my questions for you, Mike. If I can have the chief up for a second. So Chief, one thing that you specifically touched on is the different protocol if there's a crisis inside the building. So you talked about the diamond maneuver, and then you also talked about the first responder.
Yes.
Now, would that first responder possibly be a resource officer? Would they be considered a first responder if they're inside the building?
Yes.
Okay.
The school resource officers, if they're in the building, they're on location. You know, they're not here 7 days a week, or,
Yeah.
you know, but they are in the schools every single day. If they're in the school, they'd be the first responder. They'd call for backup, they'd call for assistance. The second officer, third, fourth, fifth would enter the building.
So they're not necessarily tasked to handle the situation directly? Because
Yes.
at first you had talked about that.
Yes, they would be tasked.
Oh, they would?
If they're on scene, they're the first officer on scene. They would go and try and mitigate the threat, whatever the threat may be. They're taught to respond to wherever the threat is and try and mitigate the threat. They call for assistance, of course, as they're approaching whatever the incident was. They call for assistance, but they are the first responders. If they're in the school, they would be the first ones to respond.
So going to, because you would thankfully, and I was definitely hoping that you were going to talk about this, the on-site trainings, whether they be in the schools or whether they be at the Quincy Hospital building, are the resource officers a part of those trainings?
Yes. At one point, we trained all of our officers in the schools. We've now we've hired a few younger officers, so I've spoken with Mike Dracchio about getting some of the newer officers in the school as well. Not only, part of it is to show how to respond, but also just familiarization. So, like, I went to North Quincy High School about 3,000 years ago, and it was a little bit different then. I don't think I could find my way around in North Quincy High School. I've been in Quincy High School. I don't think I could find my way around, and my officers are the same way. A lot of them did graduate from Quincy Public Schools, but they don't know all the school buildings intimately. What we like to do is get our officers in there as often as we can and train inside the schools to respond to different areas in the schools. And part of what we practice is clearing hallways, going down, looking in rooms, and doing different drills in the school. And we plan on continuing that. We've done it, and we plan on continuing.
How often are these trainings happening? Would they be in the hospital building just for crisis scenarios, or inside the schools?
Inside the schools, I don't know that we've done it this school year, but we've done it almost every school year since I've been the chief. We've been in some school in some form, and we continue to do that. As far as the training like the hospital, we use that. It's very similar to a school building, so they're using that for practice. They're in at least once a month in that. They do once a month down on the shooting range, the gun range. They also use a school building over, and I think it's Hyde Park, that the Boston Police allow us and train with us as well. And they go over to an actual old school, and they train in that building as well. So they're in buildings, clearing classrooms, or clearing offices or classrooms, doing that training at least once a month and sometimes more.
Okay, because you had said that you don't know, it hasn't happened this year. You haven't done the in-school trainings.
No, not in this school year, no. Not at this
Is
point.
there a reason why?
We just have not gotten to it, actually.
Okay.
And it's ongoing, the training's ongoing. It doesn't necessarily have to take place in the school building. The school building setting is good because it familiarizes us with the different nuances in the buildings, but the premise and how to respond and how to react, it doesn't really matter that it's a school building. That's why we like the hospital, because it kind of mirrors an office building, school building. There are rooms with hallways, and we can go down and do the different maneuvers that we have. But so in the schools, there's more familiarization.
Yeah, and I think especially for the resource officers, never mind just crisis management officers, you know, the resource officers, I would like to think, and I think the superintendent and Mike can speak to this, are definitely a part of the school committee. You know,
Oh, absolutely. They're in the schools every day, so they're more familiar than, you know, most school personnel as well. They're all over the schools every day.
I think if you throw them into a situation where they have to act in a crisis management way, you know, sometimes, you know, the way that you react depend upon the severity of the situation. You know, this goes back to the way that we handle things mentally. You know, your familiarity with things might be scrutinized in a way because you're kind of forced to, you know, say, hey, you know, what's happening and what do I need to do? You know, I feel like, especially with like the bystander effect, and this is, you know, I'm not speaking to the amount of information that's given to these officers, the amount of training. I'm just speaking, you know, in general that there might be a time where they are kind of, what's the word I want to use? They might not know how to react in the right way. You know what I mean? They're kind of in shock in a way. That's what I want to say. They're in shock. So I think the more that they get familiar with the buildings themselves, because I know you said that you're trying to bring in younger resource officers who might not be familiar with the buildings altogether.
Well, they wouldn't be police, they'd be patrol officers, the
Okay,
patrol
they would be
officers.
okay.
The resource officers are in the buildings every single day.
Okay.
How they react, you can train them and hope for the best, you know, prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
Yeah, but having it repetitive, you know, at least just whether they've done it the year before, or they've done it this year, just kind of getting everybody on the same page and just so everybody can better communicate the information and say, you know what, this is what I learned, and you know.
A lot of what we do is high-stress training as well. We don't just kind of wander through the building. There's noise, there's yelling, there's people running around, there's people coming and going. We've even practiced certain scenarios with, you know, like we have interns and that type of thing, that we make pretend that they're students, so it ramps it up a little bit. So we hope that we can bring that level of stress up, so that if they were to actually get involved in an actual incident, they'd be kind of used to that level of elevated or heightened awareness.
Right.
And we hope that they perform the way they're supposed to in the way that they're trained.
All right, thank you. Can I have Mara up real quick? Thank you. So Mara, you talked a lot about the support services after a crisis incident, but what are we doing before the crisis incident? Are we asking students periodically if they feel safe? Is there some kind of communication or some kind of open dialogue, whether it be with the teachers, whether it be with the guidance counselors, whether it be with the principals, anybody who's really considered a facilitator inside the school system or even outside the school system if they're in somehow related in extracurricular activities, whether it be sports or clubs or anything related to chorus or drama, anything along those sorts where periodically they're basically forced to ask these questions. Do the students feel safe? Not to really make it a very serious conversation, but just to kind of make students aware that, you know, Quincy Public Schools is here to help you feel safe in any way that we can. You know, we're offering all these different services, but just kind of making it a light conversation in a way, saying, you know what, even though this horrible incident has happened, do you feel safe? You know, I think that's really important. So can you kind of talk about that and what we're offering for students?
Sure. I think that speaks to our school culture, and I think that the PBIS framework is really helpful in that way. So there'd be different levels of what we're talking about with safety and different types of interventions. So like for PBIS, a lot of the acronyms for the sites, like for Marshall, they're safe, respectful, and ready. You know, and I know that a lot of schools are saying that over and over. What does it mean to be safe in our school? What does it mean to be safe, you know, in our hallways, in our classrooms? So they're actually trying to teach those pro-social skills about safety. So we're always having those conversations daily through that PBIS network. We also do social emotional curriculums like Second Step, Kids and Company, Steps to Respect around conflict resolution. So there's different types of safety that we're always concerned about. We're always trying to do prevention, give kids those coping skills and those strategies, you know, to prepare them in a way that people are safe with each other, that we're always working with staff about how to create a safe learning environment. So there's all different kinds of ways in the school system that we do that. If kids are struggling with their behavior, you know, I partner a lot with Erin Perkins from Special Education, And we're always taking a look at, does this child need more structure? Do they need someone to check in with more often? So there's a lot of, I'm sorry if I'm not hitting all the areas, but there's a lot of different things that we do with, within the context of the school around safety.
Okay. Following up with that, if there's something that, say for instance, a teacher overhears in the classroom, whether it be a joke a student's making, or if they're talking about something they saw on social media or something like that, because I think that a large part of this conversation in terms of crisis management and preventing crises like what happened in Florida, unfortunately, go back to social media. What one kid sees, might be a domino effect, and it kind of does become a rumor that, that there could be some truth behind that. Is there, and I'm so sure that this is something that teachers already are doing, is, can you kind of talk about, just for the folks at home, the reporting process in terms of if a teacher does hear something, the proper procedures that are in place for that? Because I think that's important, especially when we do talk about instances like mass school shootings, where somebody might have heard something and then it trickled down, and come to find out, the source was there to begin with.
So we have a definite protocol, which we train teachers every year. The guidance staff does that within their staff meetings in collaboration with their principals. During new teacher orientation, I give that presentation, but we always have reminders about safety. If you hear something or you see something in someone's writing, you hear something about social media, do not leave that school day and immediately report that to student support and your principal. And then they make an assessment about what's happening. So then we figure out what it is that we're looking at. We look at the information. We make a determination whether that child needs to be assessed through the crisis team, through social and mental health. We'll make that referral if necessary. We're calling parents. We're working with the director of safety and security. So Mike, the school resource officers. I often call Lieutenant Glenn. The superintendent, of course, is always providing guidance in this manner too. So we always take a team approach. It's never just one person that's trying to handle that situation. And when it's above and beyond the school to respond, we defer to the crisis team and the police. So we take it very, very seriously. People know what they're supposed to do with that information, and they know they're supposed to do that immediately. We tell people, if you're home and you're reading something and someone's writing, you call that principal that night. And they'll call me, I'll call the superintendent, or they'll call the superintendent, and we'll try to figure out what we need to do from there. So it doesn't end for us, when the school day is over. If someone finds something that they're concerned about, we'll address it right away.
Is there a component to that if for instance, a student is hesitant about talking about something that, they might approach a staff member, whether it be a principal, a guidance counselor, or a teacher, or anybody for that matter, where they say, hey, I might have seen something, or I might have heard something, or heard something from somebody else where I don't really know if I want to talk about it, but, it's kind of bugging me. Are teachers, guidance counselors, sports personnel, are they trained to basically handle the situation in a delicate way, to let the student know that it's okay if you want to talk to us in confidence, because this is just going to stay between me and you? Is that part of the conversation?
Well, we never promise confidentiality with regard to safety issues. So what we do say, and kids are telling you because they want you to do something about it. So they might say to you, please don't tell anybody, but they know that they should be telling somebody because something needs to happen. So what we do say is that, we don't ask teachers to try to sort that out in the moment in the classroom. What we say to them, I hear what you're saying, that makes me worried too, something of that sort. I'm going to take you down to the guidance office, or I'm going to get the guidance counselor to come get you. They're going to have a conversation with you, and we're very, very careful. And kids, I think we're trying to teach them that they're not snitching. They're making a report around concern and safety around a peer or whatever, and kids feel good about that in the end, if we do it right, and we help them through that process. But they know that, we're all stakeholders in this, we're all responsible for school safety, and they're part of that community. And kids are really good about that. And I've been very impressed about how genuinely concerned kids are and how appropriate they are. And I think, you know, we're getting better and better about teaching that skill to kids.
Basically, here, if you see something, say something. Yeah, that's really important. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. There was one thing that I really wanted to emphasize, and Mr. Bergoli kind of went ahead of me and talked about it. In terms of the metal detectors, I don't think it's important at this point for this body, and certainly something for the city to look at, but certainly something or not look at, but for us to make a determination on whether or not we should implement this or not, but certainly evaluate and certainly see what other communities have done in terms of handling people coming in and outside the schools with certain things that might not be prohibited. But I think it's something this body should definitely consider at some point implemented as policy, because a lot of communities have done it, and I've seen it, and sometimes, I think we look at other communities to see what other things they're implemented, and I think that's one of the things we should definitely look into. But thank you all for addressing my questions and certainly coming here to present this. Turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Mr. Gattro?
I just have one quick question that I wrote down that I didn't ask, which is the double-edged sword of student use of social media during a crisis situation. Well, it might provide hope to a parent. There are issues, and I'm sure law enforcement issues. So, and you saw in Parkland, I mean, they were literally acting like a reporter, one of the students, and videotaping himself as if he was on the scene as a reporter. So, do we, or should we, provide any guidance or wisdom to students about the use of social media, or should we simply leave that at their discretion? Have you all thought about that, or do we do anything?
I think we talk about it all the time. I don't think there's a way to absolutely control it. And as you said, I mean, with the Parkland, but even going back to Columbine, right after Columbine, there was a lot of talk about taking the phones away from the students at the high school level, and then there was a ton of research that said they need that because they do relate communication information about what's going on in the building. So it's this,
double-edged sword.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I mean, the students in the school, I mean, obviously the regulation is that you put it on, turn it off, or put it on silent. I think it's very difficult to control. But in regard to an incident, I think there are probably more times it helps rather than hurts. But you're right. I mean,
I didn't know what the conventional wisdom is. That's what I'm asking. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Bergoli?
Just quickly, I just want to let the public out there know that I'm on the school committee. I can't get into the building without going through the proper protocol. So, and regarding the entrance into Hunt Creek, I don't know how we're going to do that because athletic teams use that all the time. I mean, you have to get back into the building after practice, and I don't know what the answer is, but I'm sure you guys can figure it out. So, thanks.
I have a comment and a couple of questions. First of all, I want to thank you. I think every parent and every teacher should feel safer going to sleep tonight than we have in the past. It's great to have an update on this information. And I know the response the city gives to any 911 call is super. It really is. The city is wonderful how it responds, and so quickly. As big as our city is, you're not far away, from the emergency responders. So I think I want to say that up front, and to thank all of you, Amar, for presenting tonight. A couple of questions. Amar, in your last part about the protocols for communication?
Yes.
So I see on this that the first one and this last one are call staff meetings to announce what has happened. That's not always happening. It's not always happening in a timely way. And it becomes a real issue with social media because the kids know everything and the teachers don't. And teachers have not found out sometimes for a couple of days after an incident. So I think I'd like to just see that, and several staff members have mentioned that to me. So I'd just like to. The other thing is, it doesn't even mention on here notify school committee. So we're the people who represent you to the public, And the public, we're supposed to be communicating with them all the time, they're supposed to be communicating with us, but we are not informed. And so it becomes a problem for us when we're not communicating with. So I'd like to see some of these protocols just highlighted a little bit and, sure. Okay, thank you. My second one is, I'd like to put into the security subcommittee that we at least look at, that we get a report on the incident reports in some method that's going to make you comfortable and give us the information that we need. Because I think we can't be supporting you if we don't know what's going on. So I believe that that's a good ask, so I'd like to see that one. I also think, James, we can put in looking at positives and negatives of metal detectors. I'm not a fan, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it.
No, and I think at least looking at an analysis, a cost analysis, and looking at what other communities are doing.
And that's the place to do it, though, I think.
Yeah.
And the only other thing I would suggest, another thing I'm not a fan of, is the ALICE protocol, and I would like just an update about what it is out there and the other protocols similar to that, just so we know, just so everybody here knows what they're expecting kids to know and do in those things. It doesn't have to be a big formal thing, but just some information about it. The third thing, the resource officers, Chief, do they have a different job description than regular patrol officers?
They're all regular patrol officers, but yes, they do. Your job description basically is whatever the needs of the school are and whatever the school department or the school superintendent dictates that their function is. Basically what they go in, they provide a sense of security for the school. They also basically provide a friendship or kinship with one of the students. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is they make friends with the students feel comfortable with them, they make the students feel comfortable that they can come to them if they were to have an incident like Mara had said earlier. You know, you see something, say something, a lot of them develop relationships, so they feel comfortable speaking with the school resource officer. The school resource officer then is responsible for taking that information, depending on what it may be, sharing it with the Quincy Public School staff, the superintendent's office, whoever, the principal, wherever it should go. They relay that information. They also relay it back to Pat Glynn. They deal daily with Pat Glynn. He brings the information back. There's a lot of situations in the school that the school resource officers mitigate before it gets out of the school. So they handle some of the smaller problems. If it was a little bit bigger, they may need extra resources with an investigator or that type of thing. But those are the kind of things that they take care of. Anything that goes on in the school, it keeps our officers out on the street, the patrol officers out on the street, out of the schools, and they kind of basically handle anything that goes on in the school. And sometimes it may be criminal charges, it may be an arrest, unfortunately, sometimes, or it may just be relaying information, or it might just be listening to some student that has an issue. So they're a little bit more touchy-feely and hands-on than the officer out on the street because they have the time, the knowledge, and they have the knowledge of the students. So it is kind of a different
develop
choice.
relationships.
Correct.
So who evaluates them? You or the superintendent?
Both, actually. We're in communication quite frequently about which direction they're going in. If there's a hiccup or an issue with any one of the school resource officers or something's not handled appropriately, then we meet and we talk and we iron it out and make sure that it doesn't happen again. Or sometimes it might be a misunderstanding, but we communicate quite frequently about their role and what they do and how they handle themselves. They report daily to Lieutenant Glynn, so he has oversight over what they're doing as well, and he's in touch, like I mentioned earlier, a number of times on various issues throughout the week with the student support staff.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to have one bit of information. House Bill 3610 that Representative Marjorie Decker has proposed is a bill that's very lengthy. There was a synopsis in the Globe last week, and you were all emailed a copy of that today, I believe, by Marjorie Decker. All the school committee members were. And it's a bill to enact temporarily preventing firearm access for extremely dangerous or suicidal individuals. So it's worth looking at, I think, and for the people in the public to look at and maybe give testimony, written testimony on that if they agree with it. But it's very, it secures down, it secures a lot of things down. My last thing is I think we need to update the policy book. So many things have changed and are continuously to change. So the policy book around Mr. Rigoli, around safety and security, maybe a thing we should look at next, if possible. And my very last thing, which really is going to sound mundane after all of this really high emotional and discussion, very good discussion. I'm concerned about the sidewalk at Burnside. I mentioned it to the principal in the fall. I know it's DCR, and it is completely muddy. If there's any moisture in the world in the past 3 weeks, it's completely muddy, and the parents have no choice but to exit their car with their little babies into the street, because they have to park there. They can't walk across them, they can't get the kids across the mud. So, and the principal had told me he was gonna contact DCR. That's why I'm so glad the mayor's back now, because I think the mayor might have a bigger contact than the principal does at DCR, perhaps.
Well, that's not the sidewalk, that's the shoulder of the road.
It's the shoulder of the road.
And it's been created by people parking up on the shoulder.
But that's where they're told to park when they drop off their kids. So it's a difficult situation, but he said that he was gonna put stones or something in there, he was gonna fill that in. DCR told his principal that. So,
Yes, that was a year and a half or 2 years ago, I think.
also this fall, when I talked to him, he said that he had contacted him again, and he was assured that that was gonna happen. So I don't know if we
I'll
can,
follow up.
thank you very much. That's all I have.
Good.
Are we good? Thank you very, very much. Thank you. Take a 5-minute recess. Okay, the next item on the agenda, Mr. Mulaney, is a budget transfer request.
As we all know, we had a problem with flooding, water in some of the buses that affected, it didn't affect the large buses, it affected the mini buses. Through further investigation after the event, we got most of the buses up and running. We've been dealing with the insurance company. Mr. Mulvey and myself have met with them recently, and it looks like what their suggestion is, and we can agree with, they're saying that the 27 or 28 minibuses, they'd really prefer if they totaled them, returned them to them, and they were going to be giving us approximately $900,000 in return. With that kind of money, we'd be able to purchase 22 vehicles going forward, 13 of which would purchase straight out, 9 of which would do over a 3-year period. We have $90,000 in our budget, so what we're looking for right now is a transfer of $900,000 from special ed salaries to the acquisition of vehicles right now. As we get the money from the insurance, we've got to come to you again to see another transfer from that line back to the salary line, so there'd be no deficit incurred.
We have a motion?
No, somebody take the motion first.
On the motion, Mr. Bertrand.
On the motion, a couple of questions, Jim. The first question in educating, I thought the city was self-insured.
The school buses are not.
School buses are.
So there are certain things within the city that are insured. Okay, I wasn't aware of that. And second question, we got your documentation. Do you have documentation from the insurance company that says, yes, we're going to pay you this? Or was it verbal to you?
Well, it was.
Do you have anything in writing?
We don't have it in writing yet. We have their list of the comps, what they said to do. So, and they're just waiting for us to get back to you after this. If you people accept the settlement. As soon as you people agree to it, because we weren't gonna. I mean, I don't think it was in my. I don't have the authority to say, yep, that's fine. We'll go ahead with that. So we'd like your permission to accept the settlement that they've offered.
I mean, I suspect I'm going to vote for this, but I don't like not having documentation from somebody. We're going to take money from special ed, so when was that special ed money going to be used? I'm just saying, hypothetically, and obviously everybody knows all insurance companies follow through exactly as they say they're going to follow through on all of the claims that we submit, especially when it's not in writing. But hypothetically, if they don't pay, what's impacted?
If they don't pay, I mean, we're obviously not going to spend the money until we get the agreement on
the $900,000 special ed. What?
I mean, we transfer it in, but I wouldn't release it until, or put the purchase order up or a contract up until we knew it was signed.
Oh, until it was signed by the insurance company. So okay, so we're not This is, you mean a purchase order for the new buses?
Correct.
Okay, so.
Because we'd have to have a contract.
An act of us voting shows them that we're willing to front the money for the buses. Then they give us documentation that says they're gonna reimburse us.
Correct.
And then we feel safe and we're in a good spot and we can order the buses.
Correct.
I got you. And then the money safely goes back.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. I feel better about that. And so these were, how many buses did you say? It was
27 vehicles.
27 vehicles. So the last storm that the mayor dealt with the governor over the weekend, where were the buses?
I believe they were located on Pageant Field.
So they were not in the location they were originally.
Correct.
And it wasn't necessarily the location, although I know that we talked last time about changing permanently the location. It was really the procedure that wasn't followed, right? So this time, in anticipation of not just, I assume tonight's storm too, they're probably
correct
as well. So they're all at Pageant. Okay, so no buses were impacted the past storm?
No.
This week? Okay. So, understood, I'll support it. Thank you.
Mrs. Hubley?
Once if we go through and approve and everything is signed, how soon do you see the buses in circulation?
It's going to be phased in. They have, buses usually take a long time to get because they have to special order them. They have 9 vehicles that they've acquired already that they'll be able to get to us. And it's a company that's on the state contract, so we don't have to go out to bid on them. We deal with them in the past as well. The remaining 13 vehicles would have to order. In the normal course of events, it could take up to 5 months to get those. However, what they're going to be doing is they're going to be pulling buses out of line and getting them to us, because a lot of the other districts will be wanting them in September. So they're going to be pulling them out of line to get them to Quincy and then backfill those orders for the other districts.
Thank you.
Mr. Andronico?
Thank you. I know earlier in the documentation you had sent over, it mentioned that Arbella would be advancing half of the 900,000, 450,000 first, and then followed by the rest of the payments within fiscal year 18.
Yes.
I would just want to double check what the increment of those payments will be, when we could expect them, in particular the first half of that money.
As soon as the agreement's signed, they'd start processing it. We wouldn't have it in hand, that's why we want to make the transfer for the whole $900,000. Then what we'll do is, as we turn over the vehicles to Arbella's recovery unit, then they would be releasing the funds on the other buses. And since they're all different values, the newer buses obviously would have a greater value. It'll depend upon how we get the money back as we turn them over to Arbella.
Okay, thank you.
So we have a motion on the floor from Mrs. Hubley to approve the budget transfer in anticipation of transportation insurance. So would you call the roll?
Sure. Mr. Andronico?
Yes.
Mr. Bergoli?
Yes.
Mr. Demichis?
Yes.
Mr. Gattro?
Yes.
Mrs. Hubley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lebo?
Yes.
And Mayor Coe.
Yes.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Jim, thank you, and also thank Kevin Malton for the very hard work you put in on all this.
Next item on the agenda is to
Motion
accept.
to accept with a letter of gratitude to Blue Cross Blue Shield.
All in favor?
Aye.
Out of country travel, Quincy High School to Nice, France. Monica.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any sharp things, overnight travel, Sterling Middle School to Camp Wayne.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Out of state travel, academic to Capital One, Quincy Highs to national championship.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Additional business? Communications? Upcoming school committee meetings, March 21st and April 11th, here at 6:30 p.m. Upcoming subcommittee meetings, Wednesdays at Hollington Hall. Teaching and learning will be March 28th and April 25th at 6:15. I'm not sure what happens at 6:15. Oh, that's right, I'm sorry. Right. Athletic and Wellness, March 14th at 6, and Facilities and Security, March 14th at 6:30 p.m. And one's going to be earlier.
March 14th, the facilities will be first.
Will be first? Okay. And I think that we will be getting some items to you that we'd like to have on those subcommittee meetings. So, And quarterly budget and finance will be April 25th before the teaching enrollment at 6 o'clock. Report of subcommittees. I believe I'm the only one who has a report of the subcommittee this week. So the teaching and learning subcommittee met on February 28th. Most of us were present, as was the entire superintendent and leadership team. We appreciate that, except for the superintendent. Couldn't make that one meeting for the first time in his life. But anyway, that team, we discussed, we had an update on the differentiation in the math curriculum and also in the close reading, a very significant presentation by the curriculum team. And then we had a presentation by the Director of Information Technology, Keith Segaller, and Eddie Smith on the Google Classroom. And we heard some really exciting things about what's being done with the Google Classroom. We had, Mr. Segaller tells us there are over 10,000 users, and I think what he meant to say there are not 10,000 users, there are 10,000 people who have the capacity to use. So I would like the minutes change to reflect that we have every student, I believe, and every staff member on Google Classroom. We're concerned, there was some concern in there, and we've asked Mr. Segaller and Mr. Mulvey to possibly address this at a future time with us. Some of these applications are phenomenally valuable, but we're not using them everywhere in all classrooms for various reasons, and so I think we need to take a look at that and see whether they're instructional or whether they're part of the instructional process or whether they're an add-on. So I think we need to really, maybe at curriculum and learning, sometime we could look at that and have Mr. Mulvey help us decipher that information too. So we had concerns around students with disabilities because we see this as a great use for them if it's not being used. So we'd like to find a way to collaborate to make that happen. But the full minutes can be seen on the webpage. Executive session, none. Do I have a motion to adjourn? All in favor?
Thank you.